You must tell me when to... Gathered, tonight's guest needs absolutely no introduction. But before we get to the great Shaun Tomson, we've got a segment with Dean Allen, a historian who I'm sure you've all heard of. He's going to be doing a segment on the Cape Recife Lighthouse. Dean
Hello, it's Dean Allen here, and I'm at the Cape Recife Nature Reserve, and I'm about to climb that 24-metre building you can see in front. In fact, that lighthouse has a total of 87 steps, so here we go. Wow, here I am at the top of the Cape Recife Lighthouse. This amazing structure, which is part of the Port Elizabeth landscape, of course, marks the southernmost part of Algoa Bay. And this lamp that you can see here at the top of the lighthouse, would you believe, has a candle power of 4 million. It can reach 29 nautical miles out to sea, which is quite incredible. So this lighthouse, which was built in 1849, has been protecting shipping in this area for generations. It's quite amazing. In fact, this area out here to sea is known as Thunderbolt Reef, due to the fact that HMS Thunderbolt got shipwrecked here. So of course there was a need for a lighthouse like this. And as you can see here, this incredible structure, which will be lit up as we speak, protects the shipping in this area of the Eastern Cape.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, just before we continue, a big thank you and a shout out to Amobia, to Fat Cats, to Fitch and Leeds, and to Spa for sponsoring the shows. Thank you very much, very kind of you. Okay, we're going to cross over to Shaun Tomson. As I said earlier, he needs very little, if any, introduction. But to put it simply, he's the influential surfers ever, the top 10 greatest ever, and a world champion in 1977. And I would think if I had to sit here the whole evening and write down his, or if I had to write down his accolades, it would take the whole evening. So let's bring the great Shaun Tomson. Shaun, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, it's great to be there, and I missed coming back to South Africa. But I'm going to be there for a couple of weeks in August. Looking forward to that. So just around the corner, and it's great to chat to you guys.
Well, when you come here in August, you can come and get your pineapple jacket from O'Malley. You look nice at Jabba in that jacket.
I want that pineapple jacket from Gino the Jeweler. I want it.
Shaun, we've got a full show tonight, so if you don't mind, we're going to cut to the chase. What we'd like to do is start off with you as a young guy. And obviously the road or journey to becoming a world champion could not have been an easy road. Tell us a little bit about yourself as a young guy.
Well, I grew up in Durban. My mom and dad were beach people. They loved the beach. My dad was a champion swimmer. His dream was to go and swim in the Olympics, but was very badly attacked by a shark while surfing. I think it's the first recorded incident in South Africa of an attack on a surfer. So that destroyed his dreams, but he never lost his love for the ocean. And all my earliest memories of being down at the beach with my mom and dad. My mom would pack a big hamper of food, and we'd sit right on the beach between Bay of Plenty and North Beach. My mom loved the ocean. She grew up on the island of Malta during the Second World War. It was very heavily bombed. It was the most heavily bombed place in the history of the world, 3,600 air raids. And she was eventually evacuated down to, and ended up in Durban. And she told me she walked down West Street and saw the Indian Ocean and said, "I've never felt as free as when I've been at the sea." I mean, beautiful words.
Yeah, not going back to Malta in a rush.
Yeah, not going back to
Shaun,
Malta in a rush. But so that was our life. We were just on the beach every single weekend. I started swimming. My dad taught me how to body surf when I was about 4 years old. And then it was on little surfer planes. They were like these rubber inflatable mats. And then I went on to a little Wetland Surfmaster pop-out. It was called the bodyboard, but we used to use it to stand on. And then I got my first board in '65. And then, I was stoked the whole time. The very first time I ever stood up on a wave at the Bay of Plenty, I was stoked. And I've been stoked ever since. And that was about 349 years ago.
And tell me now, as a young guy, were you fiercely competitive and driven?
I think I was very competitive. I played a lot of sports at school, not very well, but I was pretty enthusiastic. Rugby, cricket, tennis. I was swimming. I was a swimming captain, of course. I was at a Jewish school, so not such good swimmers there. But I loved sport. I loved competing. My dad had been a competitor in his youth, and I just loved surfing. And then the competitive aspect started up. I like to think I was an instant success. I got a third in my very first surfing event at the Bay of Plenty. There was only 3 of us, but I got my third.
I was going to ask you if it came naturally to you.
Yeah, a third out of 3 was a good start, but I always thought of it as third and not last. So I suppose even at a young age was, I think was important. I always looked at athletics and surfing and competition. If you lost, it was never a career ender, or it was never depression. It was just like move on, forget about it, and then move on to the next one. But I loved surfing so much, I'd naturally, I think, progressed. We had a group of guys at the Bay of Plenty who were all unbelievable surfers, all world class. So we used to have a lot of fun in the lineup, but we used to be fiercely competitive with each other. And my dad would stand on the beach with binoculars and watch everyone. And when everyone came in, he would give them a comment. So everyone knew that my dad was watching them. So it was like
Yeah.
being in a contest. Even though we were having fun, we were all going very, very hard at every single session.
Yeah. And Shaun, just as a matter of interest, who were some of those guys in the lineup in those early days of your surfing?
Well, there was Mike Thompson, who, other than me, I think, and Geordie is the only person to win a major world-ranked professional event. He actually was ranked number 5 in the world in 1976. My cousin Michael, and we surfed all the time together. My brother Paul also, was surfing with us. Bruce Jackson, Kevin Todd, Paul Nordine, the Richards brothers, Jeremy Yates, the Yates brothers. So we, Michael Esposito was fantastic. We just had this group of guys that were, they were stoked, they were competitive, and we had so much fun. It was the Bay of Plenty was it was the center of surfing in South Africa, and perhaps one of the centers of surfing in the world during the 70s and early 80s.
And Shaun, going back, or 10 years prior to that, when you started out, who were the main guys in the water then? And who were your role models?
Well, then it was the longboard era. So surfing really changed radically in 1968. Surfboards went from like 9-foot long surfboards, the longboards, down to, I went from like a 8'8" surfboard down to a 5'6" surfboard in about 2 weeks. But my hero, my big South African hero, was a guy called George Thompson. He's now George Thermopolis.
Yes.
But he was the greatest. Then there was Max Wetton, Robbie McWade, Errol Hickman. There was definitely amazingly talented surfers, but to me, George Thompson was my hero.
Yeah, great surfer. I remember seeing a lot of pictures of him when we were kids. And Shaun, now, you obviously, there must have been a pecking order in the water, and at what sort of point in time in those early days were you allowed into that pecking order, or were the guys quite cool with you? Did they give you waves? Did they allow you to get waves, or were you sort of kept at bay?
Yeah, no, we developed and we invented the pecking order at the Bay of Plenty. Even when we were very young, when we were like 13, from 13 onwards, I would say we started getting pretty good. We had a rule out there. You had to wait your turn for a wave. And there were some tough guys out in the lineup, and if anyone jumped the line, they'd just get a flat hand. So everybody knew that it was like gentlemen's rules out there. Even though surfing was out of culture and wild, and there was still, at the Bay of Plenty, it was very, very well established, and you waited your turn, you got your wave. This was amongst the dozen guys that were really good.
Yes.
People that were sort of learning were more down on the shoulder, but everyone understood. You know what I mean? You just waited your turn, and then it was your wave.
Yeah. Sandy, I do apologize. I forgot to mention that you're co-hosting. It's been a real test of technology, by the way. Sandy's sitting in Joburg. Shaun's in California. Spider's in Durban. Peter Townend is, I think, in your neck of the woods, is he not, Shaun?
Wow, yeah, he's in California.
Yeah, and then Derrick's in Australia. So, Sandy, welcome. I do apologize for not introducing you in the beginning.
I'm listening about who was in the water, George Thompson, and all those. I want to know, why did he change his surname?
Good question.
Yeah, well, he was of Greek ethnicity, and I think he just wanted to reconnect with his cultural heritage. A lot of people, when they came down, our grandparents, when they came down to like South Africa, they changed their name. Like our family name was Tomshinsky, and they changed it to Thompson. And I'm not going back to Tomshinsky. So George, was Thermopolis, and thought, he's going to go back to Thermopolis.
Now,
carry
Sandy,
on,
you've
I'm
got.
interested. Carry on.
I beg your pardon?
Are you going to cover about the book?
No, I was going to ask, basically, to give it some context, you've known Shaun for some time.
Well, Shaun's been a very big supporter of disabled surfing, adaptive surfing in South Africa. I've had lunch with Shaun, that's the thing that I can say. And he's just been amazing for it's a pun intended, the movement of disabled surfing in South Africa. So,
Yes.
I don't know if any of you know it, but adaptive surfing, it's now called para surfing. I think it's changed. I don't know, Shaun, maybe you know. But the ISA, the International Surfing Association, introduced adaptive surfing about 7 or 8 years ago. And my younger brother is an adaptive surfer. He gets a bit embarrassed that he's an adaptive surfer because he only has a paralyzed arm. And in adaptive surfing, there are 5 divisions, and the most challenging of which is the blind division. Now you can imagine.
Yeah.
They've never seen people before. But anyway, that's a different story. But Shaun, we needed to get the South African team over to La Jolla to the first World Champs. And Shaun very, very generously donated us a surfboard. We raffled it. We got money. He came to the beach. He's been to the beach every single time South Africa has been on that beach over the 5 or 6 years.
Yes.
And he's been there rallying for us, and indeed was on the beach when my brother won a gold medal. And I thought this is the time to bring Anthony in.
You've got the picture. You've got,
Anthony's
got a
about
picture of it. Yeah, Gary's got a picture of it.
Yeah.
We'll find the picture.
So just to say that we're deeply, deeply grateful, Shaun. I mean, you do a lot of outreach stuff. I know you're a very busy guy, but you've given us such a big part of your heart. And we've...
I love it. I love doing it.
Yeah, I know.
To many
I know. Just ask Gary if Anthony's ready, because he's got a great story to tell.
Is Anthony on? I see he is on, yeah?
Yeah.
Anthony,
here.
can you hear us?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very
Hey, Shaun.
good, thanks. We got your mentor here.
I know. Look at that.
We've actually got a picture of the two of you as well. How are you doing, Ant?
Yeah, I'm good.
You
Thank
want
you.
to have a rap to Shaun?
Well,
Yeah,
what I
hey,
want
Shaun.
to do is ask Anthony to... Anthony had a car accident when he was 4 or 5 years old. We can never quite
Okay.
remember. But I want him to tell you the story of Shaun.
There you go. Ant, all yours.
Okay, so when I was 5, it was 5, not 6, I had a car accident and it left me paralyzed. So I have an arm that doesn't work. And I started surfing because the doctors said to my parents that they should get me a surfboard so that it would force me to try and use my right arm, which they did. And clearly it didn't work because I still paddled with one arm. But what did happen was I got hooked into surfing. And every other surfer on the planet, it's the bug bites. It becomes a lifestyle, not a sport. And you just want to get better as a surfer and surf often. And I was 7 years old, and I had an old Lamont single fin, and I would put it on my bed. And I think most, the young kids do this these days, with the fin off the back of the board, and pretend I was surfing on the board. But on the wall in front of me, there was a picture, and I think it was Jerry Lopez. It was a point of view shot where the camera is behind him on the surfboard. You could see his feet, and he was in a barrel, and you could see the barrel, kind of going over him. And I would stand on my board and pretend that was me, surfing on this wave. And then I would also regularly lie in bed. It was 1977 when Shaun became world champ. And I would literally kneel down and pray that I could be world champion surfer like Shaun Tomson. I would say those words. And then obviously,
Very nice.
you get older and you're not good enough, and the dream gets lost because maybe you're disabled or you're not good enough and you don't win contests. And then adaptive surfing came around in 2015. And this Robin de Kock from Surfing South Africa called me and said, would you like to go and surf, and compete for South Africa? And of course I was in. And we reached out to Shaun that year to come and give us, give us our blazers. And he met us on the beach. And Shaun, by the way, that your presence there, not only for our team, but for the whole adaptive community was remarkable. I mean, people were lining up to take photos with you. It was we were so proud that you were one of us, on the beach. It was a real special experience for everybody. Oh, there's the shot. That was actually I think that was the following year. So to end the story, 40 years later, after me praying to God to be world champion like Shaun Tomson, I ended up winning the world title and becoming a world champion. And Shaun Tomson was on the beach there to celebrate
Fantastic.
with me, watching.
There you go.
So that's
Lovely.
there's a story for you.
That was a
Great stuff, and thank you so much.
There you go. There is with the whole team. I mean, I
Awesome.
can't tell you how amazing it was. So thank you, Shaun, from
I
us.
love it. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And
Thank
so
you, Ant.
Appreciate it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Brings
Sean,
tears.
going back to your career now, we're still in the young or the early stages. Your first contest as a junior. Do you have any memories of it?
Yeah, so my very first contest was the boys division of the Bay Surf Club. That's the one where I came third out of 3. It was won by Jeremy Yates, my cousin Michael second, and I was third. Third, not last, but third. And then I think the first major competition I won was SA Boys Championship in 1969. Wow, that is so long ago, and that was at Jeffreys Bay. Can you like Jeffreys Bay, which has become sort of synonymous with my surfing? So yeah, that was my first biggest win, and then I remember I won it 3 times in a row, the junior championships, and then won the senior championships. So we had this. My father and Graham Hynd, Peter Beness. They were very instrumental in having a lot of amateur contests in Durban. So it was called the Monthly, and every month the Natal Surfing Association would have a surfing competition. So every month, and it was mobile. It would go up the north coast, down the south coast, or around Durban, and we'd have these monthly contests. So what it would do, it would create this intense competition, but also it would expose the best surfers to all these different spots and to the young kids that were at these different spots. So it was just amazing. I think it had a lot to do with my competitive success, because I learned how to compete as well. Every month I was in the water against all these guys my age and a little bit older and a little bit younger, who were all world class, and we were having a lot of fun traveling to a different place. And I think I learned that competition wasn't all about practice. Competition was about having fun and being stoked, and that's how we saw it. And then if you lost, well, you had another chance the next month. So it was never a life and death. My father, I think, was a fundamental influence on like how you deal with competition. He would say to me, never ever complain after a result, because surfing is subjectively judged. There's this subjectivity in terms of, well, is it a 7.5 or is it a 7.8? He would say, never complain about the judge's decision. He said that judge's decision, it's engraved in stone. You can cry, you can whine, you can whinge. It's not going to change it. He said, he used to say, when you win like a gentleman, and when you lose like a man. This has no sort of sexist connotation.
Yeah.
When you lose, you've got to just shoulder that loss, and have this sort of champion mindset that it's not going to impact you, and you're going to go on to
come back again
and leave the loss behind and move forward. Because that, if you carry that loss on your shoulders, you will never ever be a winner the next time.
Shaun, you often, in many of the interviews I've heard you on, you often refer to your dad. And, if I may say, and I'm sure I speak for many here, if there's one thing that's endeared you to many, many people, it's the incredible love and respect and admiration you showed for your dad. And, I mean, we've touched on him this evening, but he must have been a remarkable man.
He was a remarkable man. And all of us, I think, every single man out there, that is our greatest role in life, is how to be a good dad. And we all try, but I'll tell you the key, I think, from seeing my relationship and seeing a lot of great relationships and seeing a lot of bad relationships, is time. My dad gave us so much of his time. If I was playing a rugger match, he would come down and watch. If we would go on surfing trips, the whole family together. And my mom was the same way. She also tried to give us as much of her time as possible. And I think both of them had a lot of respect and trust in us. And I think as a young guy, when your parents trust you, you don't want to disappoint them. You want to do the right thing.
Sure.
And also, I've got to tell you this funny story. So my dad had an unbelievable sense of humor. He loved to be around young people. He loved to be laughing and joking all the time. I mean, if you were in a conversation with my dad and there was like a groupie and he and me might be standing around with a drink in their hand, he'd stand on the foot of the person next to him and make out like he didn't know he was doing it. But everyone else knew. Only the person whose foot was being stood on didn't know. And the guy would sort of, he'd look around at everyone. And everyone would notice that people eventually would be shrieking with laughter. But the very first time I won a major pro event, so the Gunston 500, it was such a legendary event. So I was doing my national service. I was 17 years old. I made the final against all these great surfers. And it was close final between me and a guy called Mike Esposito, just an amazing surfer from Durban.
Goofy footer,
absolutely incredible surfer. One of the greatest South African surfers of all time. So it was a close final. And they had this big tower. They called the Gunston Tower. Big orange tower with men red, Gunston great. And my dad was in the tower, and what he was a spotter. So he'd stand there with his binoculars and he'd shout out a color, yellow up, red up, blue up. So I knew that he knew the results because all the judges were together and they wanted to have this whole anticipation. So the 6 finalists were up on the podium and there was tens of thousands of people. And they started announcing the results and I knew it was going to be close. So I look up at my dad just before they announce the result, and I go like, how have I done? And he goes like, my dad goes like this. I go, oh, what a bummer! I've lost. And it was my first big chance. So they start announcing the results, 3rd, 2nd, and as they say second, I start walking up, and they say, and the winner is Shaun Tomson. And I looked up at my dad. My dad was cracking up.
practical joker.
Just at sort of the high point of my commencing career, he's played this joke on me. And I've thought about that a lot over the years, like about a dad doing that to a son. And there's a fundamental lesson there, I think, that competition's important.
Yeah,
but it's that important. It's not that important. And I think over the years, it's really helped me put winning and losing in perspective. That moment with my special moment with my dad and him giving me the thumbs down. It's not that important. You know what I mean? All he wanted me to do was do my best. He never ever came in when I came in from a heat and I'd lost or I'd made a screw up in the lineup and perhaps waited too long or caught the wrong way. He would never ever lecture me, ever, in my entire career. And he would never tell me what to do with the lineup as well, ever. He left it all up to me. So I knew I wanted to win for him and I wanted to win for my mom. I wanted to win for them. But I had the responsibility. And
yes.
I was winning. Yes, I was winning for the family and for me. But it wasn't like I had this father who was obsessed with his son winning. My father was obsessed with his son doing the best he could and being the best he could.
Yeah, giving it his best shot.
The winning wasn't the essential part of the equation. The winning just represented the result of the hard work and the effort and having that personal responsibility. So it was very cool. So I used to play the same joke on my dad. So when I won my first event, in South Africa, in Hawaii. So that it was massive surf. I was a complete outsider. Surf was like 15 feet at Sunset Beach. It was the biggest prize money in the world at the time, like $5,500, and I won a motorbike. Anyway, so I phoned my dad up and go, "Hey Dad, how's it going?" After the result, because he always would be. He knew when it was on, and he, how'd you go? I did okay. Well, how'd you go? I know I won.
Get him back.
Since we're talking about parenting, can we chat a little bit about Matthew and Luke?
Yes, I have a beautiful son now. My son Luke. His name means light and healer, and certainly he has been a light and a healer. He's 12 years old now, and he's in London at the moment on vacation with Carla. I'm going over next week. And then our first boy was Matthew, and we lost our first boy to a bad choice. He played a dangerous game. We believe that he heard about it at school, called the choking game. All the students wore school ties. It was at my old school, and we lost our beautiful son. So that really took my life down a different path. And, after that, I just kind of reevaluated where I'd been and where I was going. And I just went down a completely unexpected path of now inspiring and empowering people to find their fundamental purpose in life as a way, essentially, to make better choices. So I went back to graduate school. I'd done my BCom at Natal University, at KwaZulu-Natal University. So I did a Master of Science in the study of influence and inspiration. Now they call it leadership. And I started doing, writing books and doing these large events and speaking engagements to the biggest and hottest corporations in the world, and schools and universities and rehab clinics and PTSD survivors and jails. I do this thing, I call it the Double Shucker. So if you're a surfer, you know that's like, how's it? How's it, my brew? And also it's just a very, I think it's a very beautiful gesture of goodwill. So every time I do a paid speaking engagement, I do one free for a non-profit. It might be a school, university, whatever, PTSD survivors, jails, and that's the way I run my life now, the Double Shucker process. So
Shaun, do you think that that was a direct result of having the trauma of losing Matthew, that would have changed the whole trajectory of your life?
Yeah, I think it certainly changed my life trajectory. I came to understand that no one wants suffering, but suffering is inevitable. We're gonna lose our parents, friends. Please God, parents don't lose children. But with this suffering comes this terrible realization that life is short. And you better make it count, because you just don't know when it's going to stop. And you might as well be kind and live a good life and try to be the best you can be, but try to help others be the best you can be. And I started realizing this when, after we lost our beautiful son, and I started speaking at groups to hundreds of thousands of people. And I would get them, it's called writing your code. It's this amazing transformational process, and hundreds of thousands of people have done it. I'm actually going on a TV show in a few days, like one of the biggest TV shows here, to talk about this process here in the United States, because I like to say it's open source code, and this simple process can impact life immediately. I mean, I get letters back from people. I lost 50 pounds as a result of doing the code. It's like my North Star. My life has changed. My relationship with my son is better. My life is better. And it's so simple. You just pick up a sheet of paper, and in 15 minutes, you write 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. This is your code. This is your purpose. And what happens is when you define your purpose this way, many academic studies on this process of how to find your purpose. There's a lot about purpose, but there's nothing about how to find your purpose. Nothing. And this is a simple way to find your purpose. 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. So what happens if you're imbued with a sense of purpose? What the academic studies have revealed, you're going to live twice as long. I mean, how about that? You're going to have a high level of motivation. You're going to have a higher levels of well-being. And then from a business perspective, businesses that are led by people of purpose perform 42% better than businesses that are just in business to be in business. So it has these fundamental effects. No one really knows about this. So this has been my mission, to create a positive wave of purpose around the world. And for me, it all came from surfing. I wrote my first code. I called it Surfer's Code, 12 lines, and line beginning with I will. And hundreds of thousands of people have read that little code. I will always paddle back out.
Yeah.
I'll never turn my back on the ocean. Yeah, so that it all came from a little code that I gave to kids. So you just need the direction of life.
And then just tell me about Luke a bit. What sort of guy is he?
Oh, my son is a beautiful boy. He, I haven't been able to get him stoked on surfing. He plays tennis. He's athletic. I think he's going to be taller than me. But he's kind. He's loving. He's just beautiful, and he's just perfect. I just spoke to him on the phone while he's in London. It's just, it's such a blessing for me, because after we lost our boy, after we lost Matthew, we didn't think we'd be parents again because we were older.
Yeah.
But he's just every day.
His name is Light, hey? Luke,
yeah, his name means healer, bringer of light. So every day, if he comes or goes, I kiss him, but I have to kiss him 3 times. He knows that. He's a child. And I go, I love you. I love you more. I love you more than anything else in the whole wide world. He's going to get that forever. And I love doing it.
Interestingly enough, if I may come in here, we noticed the other day, and, obviously we've spoken about the love and respect you had for your dad, and I'm sure your mom as well. But one thing that was very noticeable the other day was when you and Paul were on screen, when you started talking, he had his arm around you. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And at one stage, I think he was massaging your shoulder. And then I saw a message that your sister had put on Paul's Facebook page, speaking of, or where she wrote, I love my brothers so much. And I think that's a fantastic quality. And in fact, on that note, we're going to.
I'll tell you what, I've got to interrupt you there for 1 second. So,
sure.
That's incredibly perceptive of you. Now that incredible love between us came obviously from my parents, but also, from my mom. You know what? We were not allowed to argue with each other when we were growing up. We were not allowed, the siblings, my brother, my sister Tracy, we were not allowed to argue. My mom would say, you are not allowed to argue with your brother or sister. It's just not allowed. She would say, that's how wars get started. That's what she used to say.
100% right.
So I don't remember ever having an argument with my brother or my sister. And I think it's a wonderful lesson for siblings. It's just kindness. Just
yeah, absolutely.
Because we make life so complex and complicated, and there's certain things there. Like, I'll go on the web and I'll see people writing just the most unkind comments. And it's like, there's a fundamental choice you make in your life. Like, are you going to be kind or are you going to be unkind? It's really, It's super simple.
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to hear from one of the siblings. And when Paul's finished, we're going to do a little bit on J-Bay, and then we're going to bring the legendary Spider Murphy in. I almost said Spider Merch. Do you remember him? All right. Paul Thompson. Paul, welcome to the show.
Nice to be with you all. I love it. Love my South African connection. We're blessed.
Yeah, very much.
We're
very
blessed.
much.
This is Santa Barbara, which is north of Los Angeles. My folks were vivacious, beautiful, young beach people. My mom was absolutely gorgeous, stunning on the beach. My dad was really good looking, had a fast car, gold chains, Mercedes Benz, Jaguar, Aston Martin. It was a natural progression that, Shaun was athletic, I was athletic, and we really took a fancy to the ocean because of Ernie, our dad, who was an avid waterman. Ernie was attacked by a shark in 48, came to America in 1949, went to the winter of 49, went to Hawaii, met the Duke of Hanamoko. So there was, before we could really understand the depth of what we were getting into, there was already a rich history behind us in terms of the ocean. And we had already started to figure out currents, figure out where the riptides were. We could figure out in the afternoon when the onshore wind blew onto the shore, it would blow the blue bottles and the Portuguese man of war onto the beach. So all these little intricacies and these fine details of the ocean were coming to us as young boys. Because of that Hawaiian history, and because of the intenseness of my dad, we had that spirit to prove ourselves, to be strong, to have healthy competition. So we already had a lot of stuff besides the ocean. We had this physiological thing going on, and then we sort of had the psychological thing going on that, we were safe in the water. We knew how big the swell was. We weren't going to be taking any serious risk because, man, I got some South African mentors, and Shaun has some South African mentors that were just so incredible to us. Like obscure people that were in the surfing community that really paid serious interest in us, like Maxie Wetland, Mike Ginsberg, John Plater, Jeff Sanders, Billy Sharp. All of these things started to happen in like a cyclonic, and my dad was bringing all these people. And I must say that as a young man, these people, these peripheral people, were really a part of our competitive spirit. As a 13-year-old, I was trying to chase the 16-year-olds. So it worked in a beautiful cycle. You had the older guys, the 19, 20-year-olds that were dominating. And Shaun was behind the 19, 20-year-olds because he was 16. I was 13, so I was behind Shaun and his crew. So we would flow through the break, and occasionally as a 13-year-old, I'd have to be raw hungry to be able to feed into those guys, to try and be competitive with those guys. Super healthy competitive spirit. But that's the nature of competitive anything. And that's the nature of surfing, is to get, hey, I want to get the next wave, but I don't want to burn anybody. So I have to understand the pecking order, and I have to understand that these guys are better than me, but I'm coming up real close to, you might be the fastest gun today, but you're not going to be the fastest gun tomorrow. Shaun was dialed into surfing. Shaun wanted to be, if there was the thought of a world champ back in those days, Shaun was thinking about being a world champ. I mean, at 7, 8, 9 years old, in Africa, in Durban, South Africa, we had posters of international surfers on our walls. And, hey, bro, I got a story for you. So in 69, winter of 69. I'm walking to school. I'm going to Clifton. I've got my conservative school uniform on. I've got my satchel on. I don't know if you remember those leather sandals that you used to wear with socks. And I'm walking to school, saying hi to all the dogs in the neighborhood. And the dogs in the neighborhood, sometimes they used to chase me. But I'm walking, and I walk by the Natal Mercury, which was the local newspaper.
Yes.
And I took a double take, and I go, hey, man, there's a surfer dude on the front page of the Natal Mercury in 1969. And I'm going, whoa, let me take a look at this. And I look again, and it's freaking Shaun Tomson, my brother, on the cover of the Natal Mercury, riding a 13, 14, 15-foot wave in Makaha, Hawaii. And I go, and the headline was, South African boy conquers Hawaiian waves.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I see this stuff when I'm walking to school, and I'm just going, whoa, what is really going on here? What is really happening?
Yeah.
And it had already, Shaun was winning every amateur contest, and we were sort of wanted to surf every contest that came up. However big the surf was, Shaun won every division for every year. Juniors, he won for 6 years in a row, South African champion 6 years in a row, Gunston 500 winner 6 times in a row. I mean, if you just think about that, those simple things in his amateur career, just incredible. So yes, that cyclonic effect had already, all the people started to buzz around. There was a lot of fine young surfers, women and men, that were involved in Shaun's in the upcoming of us, to where Shaun had to go to Hawaii. He won everything in South Africa. Everything was won by Shaun. Now he had to go and prove himself in Hawaii, and that
in the big waters.
In the big waters, and that was 69, his first year. 7 years later, he would be world champ surfer from this little dorpy called Durban, South Africa.
Fantastic.
It's just an incredible dream, and it just warms my heart.
As a youngster, was Shaun generally competitive by nature?
In surfing, yes, and generally competitive, yes. He wanted to be the man. I never, always with humbleness and dignity. It's
Absolutely.
like he might not say to you, I'm going to beat you in the next heat. But I know in his spirit, he was going, you got no chance, buddy. I'm going after you hard. And Shaun has a gentle personality and a gentle character. So though there were fist fights, it was always primarily with gentleness and kindness in his heart.
Okay, I'm gonna hand over to Fires then to finish off here with you guys.
Of course,
Thank
Gino,
you.
nice to meet
Thanks
you.
so
Thank
much,
you very
Paul.
much. Lekker by die see. Ek was 'n konstabel gewees in die ek was in die SAP gewees vir
Hoe is jy? Maar
Ja.
polisie, het jy
Ja,
kortbroek,
polisie.
wat jy kortbroek polisie of langbroek polisie?
Nee man. Versaglik. Ja, I was.
Jeez, what a big word.
I was a constable in the South African police for
Proper.
28 months. Proper, yeah.
Wow. Oh,
Right
did
when-
you do your national service?
I did my national service the year I was a copper, the year that Steve Biko died.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
But it wasn't you.
Hey, bro, I was hanging out at the beach, bro. Gary Perkins and myself, I swear, we'd check out a SAP bike. I'd be in my uniform. I'd sit on the back of the bike holding 2 boards because I started the South African Police Surf Club in,
Oh, no ways.
in 77. So you could book off.
3 members.
Yeah, you could book off and go surfing. And
Wow.
Gary Perkins would pick me up. He'd be driving the SAP motorcycle. I'd hold the 2 boards. Gone to the beach, my bro, surfing.
Perfect.
Character.
Oh, back with you, Shaun. Yay.
That's so beautiful. My
I
brother.
know. So, I've got 2 young sons, pretty much the same kind of age group as you, age difference as you two, and they both surf too. So I love that advice your mother gave you, saying that you must never argue, because all I did was when they used to fight, I used to put them in the bath and make them hold hands.
What a character then.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Shaun,
that was really lovely.
we know what you're really good at. What are you really bad at?
What am I really bad at?
Great question.
But it seems like there's a lot of things that I can't. I'm gonna have to think. I'm gonna have to think about that one. About what I'm really bad at. I was very bad at cooking, but I must say I'm improving. I cooked dinner for my mother last night and the night before, and I've got my bra going here. I found a new type of bra. Oh yeah, no, so I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
Good. I love that answer. Okay, and then what still and will continue to fascinate you about life?
I love doing creative projects. I love doing projects that I've never done before. I love having a go. It's like, every time you go surfing, you don't exactly know what you're going to get. There's going to be that sort of next wave. So a few years back, when I wrote Surfer's Code, I'd never written a book. I'd never made a movie. I made a super cool movie called Busting Down the Door a few years ago.
Oh, amazing. And the book, yeah.
When I started like Instinct Sportswear, Instinct way back in the day, and we're going to be relaunching Instinct actually in South Africa in a few months. So that was an amazing brand, and it was wonderful to do that. And then my wife and I launched after I sold Instinct, we launched another brand here called Solitude, and I'm working on, we're conceptualizing perhaps a new documentary that can really show people this code and show people how important it is to find purpose as a way just to being better and helping others be better. Working on a couple of other projects, and then always pushing on my speaking work, and I like to think now that I like to say I'm a purpose activist. So I'm an activist of purpose. I help activate purpose.
So that's what I was going to say to you. So your purpose is to get others to find theirs.
Yeah. I activate.
That's amazing.
That's what I do.
And if you weren't a surfer, what would you have been? What would
Well, when I grew up, I was always going to be a professional person, but it was going to be like when I was at varsity, I was studying accounting and I was studying law. So those were the two paths. I was going to be a professional surfer was not on the list. So I went down a completely unexpected path, and it's been wonderful to help build pro surfing and build the surfing industry and inspire young people. So it's just been it's been an incredible run, and it's been unexpected. Surfing's just taken me down such a different path. I loved it from the first moment I stood up, and I'm always so appreciative and thankful that, when I stood up on that first wave at the Bay of Plenty in 1965.
No one ever forgets their first wave.
Yeah, no one ever forgets it, but I was able to keep riding that wave in so many different ways, and surfing gave it to me. So I'm always very, very grateful to surfing.
And having someone like Carla beside you, and Carla is just the most fantastic person in this world. Tell me about the secrets of a happy marriage, and in that, the mix of having that cerebral loss.
Yeah, so Carla's hot. She's a hot thing. And I just saw her, her mom and my mom were best friends before they both got married.
That's amazing.
Kind of amazing, yeah. So she was born in SA, moved to London, then came back to South Africa, and her family came and stayed with us. Her mom and her sister and her dad, when they were about 10 or 11 years old, came and stayed with us for a while they came back to South Africa and got back on their feet and found a new place. So the family goes back a long way, but we didn't sort of stay connected when we were kids. And then I saw her in 1986. I just won a big surf contest in Cape Town, and I was out in South Africa, and I saw her across the room, and I went, "Wow, that's
my girl.
She's so hot." And I said to my brother, I went and chatted to her. And I hadn't chatted to her for, I don't know, 20 years or something. I just chatted to her, and I went back to my brother and said, "I'm going to marry her."
Wow.
And I hadn't even gone on a date. I hadn't even kissed her. Then she made me like wait for a date.
Good girl.
I couldn't get a date. And then I got a date, and then it was on.
So give me the secrets of a good marriage.
Well, it's not like with my brother and sister. There's not the situation where there's no rorting. There's still a bit of rorting. But I think we're very respectful of each other. She's still red hot and beautiful, which is very important.
She is.
She's also very creative, very talented, very organized, and I think we don't stand on each other's toes. And when we had our terrible loss, so if you have a loss, people handle it differently. Even though you're married and you're close, a lot of marriages actually break up.
You do, yeah.
Lose a kid. But with us, it was like two trees falling over, and we fell on each other, and I think we supported each other, and we gave each other space, and it wasn't like we had a timetable. And I think both of us learned that you have to be completely forgiving of yourself.
Oh, wow.
And each other. So you have to have this, there's no blame. There cannot be any blame. And also there has to be an acceptance of the reality of the what is, as opposed to the what if. Like, what if I hadn't done this? Or what if I'd gone there? Or what if so there's forgiveness, there's acceptance. And then also I think you need to get involved with when I say you need to, this is just my experience, my perspective. I don't give prescriptions, I just give a perspective. I think it's important to get involved with creative and inspirational projects that are good for you, but also good for others. Like after I lost Matthew, I released my book and I started speaking in front of large crowds, and I did Busting Down the Door. I did a lot of creative projects that did two things. I think they both inspired me, they inspired others, but also they kept the memory of my beautiful boy alive, and it was like they were dedicated to Matthew. And then I think it's so important from my perspective is to get back to your faith, whatever that might be. I'm Jewish, but you can be Christian, Muslim, Baha'i, Hindu, whatever your faith is. Reconnect with your faith. Reconnect with your family and friends, and if they want to help you, you must let them help you.
Geez, I should give my wife your telephone number.
Yeah, and then surfing. Yeah, surfing.
Jokes.
Surfing was so, like I like to think that I've been stoked all my life until then. Stoked, it's like a fire, man. It's like a fire inside you. And my fire had gone out. And then I had a mate in Durban, this guy, Graham Taylor. We sat right next door, our desks were right next door to each other. We were best of friends. We'd surf together and listen to all the music together. We were just really good mates. And he kept phoning me, "Hey, Shaun, let's go surfing, let's go surfing, let's go surfing." And eventually I went, okay. So he took me surfing. to this place up by Belicho Bay. I'd never surfed it before. So we walked down to the beach, and it's the surf is perfection. It's about 4 feet, like autumn in Durban, offshore wind, and the Indian Ocean, the sun is just boiling up through the ocean, because we're on the East Coast, and it's like it's exploding out of the sea. It's like a Gunston ad. Remember we used to have those Gunston ads where the sun would come up. And we walked down these steps, and I jumped in the water, and I paddled out, and I was crying. I was very, very upset. But it was like the salt water, the waves were washing my tears away. It was just an amazing sensation.
Fantastic.
And I paddled out, and I got a wave. And I could feel, Matthew was with me, and I got another wave, and I got another wave. And then just me and Graham. And then I paddled up to Graham. I said, "Hey, G, what's the name of this wave?" And surfers have great names for the waves they ride. And he said it's called Sunrise. Sunrise. And I think that represented a new sunrise for me that day. And I got stoked again, and surfing became super popular. Yeah. So surfing or whatever sport or passion that you have, whether it's just walking on the beach or climbing a mountain or coaching kids for cricket or rugby or whatever, it's that connectivity to sport and passion. It's just so uplifting, and your life might be off balance, and it can just help get you back to equilibrium.
Fantastic.
Thank you for sharing that.
Shaun, can we go back to surfing? I'm a little bit concerned about Spider. I'm sure he could have shaped about 3 surfboards in this time.
Yeah, please,
But-
Spider, the legend, God of shame.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you don't mind, can you maybe just share a little bit of your first trip to J-Bay with us? I think it was in 68, was it not?
Yeah, 68, my dad got a Jeep Wagoneer. My dad used to love cars. Paul said they're like Aston Martins, Jags. He was always loved these fast cars. But he got this Jeep Wagoneer. I think it was the only one in Durban, this big Jeep. And we had put roof racks on top, put our boards on top. And then in the back was squeezed my brother, Jeremy Yates, this red hot surfer from Bay of Plenty in Durban, and then my cousin. We were all facing each other, and we drove off. And we were on the way to Cape Town for the South African Surfing Championships, and we stopped off at J-Bay. So we stopped off, and we stayed in called the Beach Hotel. And where's the point? We found out where the point was, and that morning we drove down to the point in our Jeep Wagoneer, and we jumped out, and they were the most perfect, best waves we'd ever seen in our lives. It was like every surfer's dream to go on a surfing safari, and then when you get there, and the surf is perfect, and there's no one out. It's just us, the 4 of us, and we walk across these like sharp rocks, because in Durban there's no rocks. You know what I mean? We couldn't believe the rocks. We tiptoe across the rocks. We've got our little wetsuits on, our little 5'6" V bottoms, and we paddle out into this perfection waves, and that for me, it's like the first time I stood up on a board at Bay of Plenty. The first time I paddled out at Jeffreys Bay was perfect. So those memories, it's like they sear into your consciousness and your subconscious. It's just like part of me, that amazing experience.
And was it from that first trip that, from that moment on, you developed this, what would it be, 50 odd year relationship or love for super tubes?
Loved it. And in those days we didn't surf super tubes because the wave was too fast. We used to surf.
I was going to ask you.
Down at the point, and then over the years we moved up to tubes, and then we moved up to super tubes, because back then there was no leashes, and
Yes.
it just looked like super tube broke too close to the rocks, and it was too fast to ride. But I just developed this love, and we used to go down there nearly every school holidays. We'd go down there in July, and we'd go down there in December, and with my dad and my brother and sister, Michael Thompson, and my cousin, and Jeremy, and our friends. And it was just, it just reminds me of, that pure spirit of youth, and that amazing stone.
We're going to play a little clip of you at J-Bay, especially for those viewers who haven't seen you in action at J-Bay. So you've got
In this period, the Thompson began an intimate relationship with J-Bay, a spot many feel he rode better than anyone before or since. It was here that he adopted his low, sprawling stance, constantly rocking his board from rail to rail, eyes focused well down the line. It's also where he tuned what became one of the cleanest roundhouse cutbacks in the game. The varied sections and complexity of Jeffries taught Shaun pacing and the benefits of long, fluid turns. It marked his style indelibly.
Oh, J-Bay, I love that.
Yes, you're on top of your game there, Shaun. That first clip of you as a youngster, would that have been that 68 trip?
No, that would have been that. You know, I've got to tell you this, because there are going to be a couple of guys that have got absolutely eagle eyes. That's actually not even J-Bay, that very first trip. That is St. Michael. That's St. Michael's on Sea, and that is taken in 1970. So, yeah, isn't that a classic that they made a mistake in the movie? And normally,
it certainly looks like J-Bay.
Looks like J-Bay,
yeah, very much so. And of all the sessions you've had at J-Bay, any one particular session stick out in your mind? Or they're all the same?
No, I've had some great sessions there. You know, I had this one session I had in the, it would have been maybe 79 or 80. And this was before people had built their lives around surfing, you know. So during the week, it was absolutely uncrowded. Sometimes there'd be no one out. And on this one day, I was the first guy out. Big, like, when I say big, so J-Bay doesn't really get that big, but it's strong. You know, it was like an 8 to 10 foot day, strong. And the only guy out in the lineup. And I'm sitting there waiting for a wave, and the set comes, and this whole school of dolphins, I don't know, it looked like about hundreds of them just came towards me. And it's amazing, J-Bay, you have this massive school of dolphins, and they're coming towards me, and I swing around, and I paddle into this wave, and I take off, and I'm riding this wave with the dolphins. As I cut back, they're just everywhere under me on the wave there. It was just amazing. And then they all disappear as I get down into the inside section called Impossibles, where the wave gets like really, really hollow. And the sun's coming up over the you know, just off the water towards the mountains there. And I'm inside the tube, way back, and it's dark in there. And as I start coming out, 2 dolphins must have been riding the wave with me. They jump through the tube right in front of me. I think I'm going to actually bash into the dolphins. They're right there. And I ride through this spray and I kick out. It was like insane. It was the greatest wave I ever had. And the only person on earth who saw it was me. And the only person on earth who experienced that was me. So it was it was a beautiful moment. My best moment at J-Bay.
Okay, we're going to play a little clip, and then if you don't mind, we're going to go into your Hawaiian experiences and involve Spider. Probably wouldn't be complete without another Jeffreys Bay legend, Bruce Gold. Bruce, the rooster, how are you, my man?
Fine weather positive.
Have a seat, Bruce.
Classic
Bruce, you've obviously got a lot of memories of Shaun Tomson and the Thompson family.
Sure. Only with a cigarette holder on the beach and his little beach buggy, sure. Always very polite to me, I must admit.
And Shaun surfing, you obviously admired him for many years.
Oh, yeah. He likes to wind up on the bigger waves. Wind up for his bottom turn. Always look good. The weaving looks good always.
Yeah, and Brewster, do you recall when you first saw Shaun Tomson in the water?
Oh, man, that's Bay of Plenty days. You know, it was after longboards because it was a policeman for 3 years. So
it was Paul Thompson.
Long time.
Paul was a policeman as well, a constable.
Yeah, it was shortboard time. But He used to surf with my young brother. He always used to ask after Rex, yeah, because they surfed on belly boards. They all had Max Westland belly boards.
What sort of years would you be talking about? What sort of era?
In the mid-60s.
Okay.
After the 60s, yeah. Mid-60s. 68, I came back to Durban.
Do you have any particular or indelible memory in your mind of Shaun at, say, big supers?
And no, the last time I saw Shaun, but I don't know what I was doing out there. It was large. I had paddled out from Checkers Beach Break on my 9-foot Malibu, but it's a sleek one. It's the Derrick Heinz Malibu. 3 stringers, the special model. Too good to surf almost.
Yeah.
And I paddled wave at boneyards and this thing closed out on me. If there was another wave coming, I would have washed in, but I managed to get out again, and I sat right outside Super Tubes.
And Shaun was in the water as well?
I sat right outside Super Tubes, gathering my wits, hoping not to catch a wave. Someone paddled out from the pack. I was 15 meters further out, and come shook my hand and said, I'm glad not to be the oldest bully in the water. And it was Shaun.
I'm still ripping. I mean, how many years ago would this have been?
No, this was recent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just before COVID.
Okay.
He hadn't been back to Jeffreys Bay for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then he came back.
Yes.
And then while we were up there, this big set came. And Shaun had already he had edged onto my inside, and he would have gone, right or wrong, Shaun, he would have gone if he could have caught it, but my 9-footer was just correct for that one. He couldn't get in there, but...
Anyway, you got a message for the Thompsons there, Brewster?
Peace, love, love. Journey's over. Some grow younger. Some grow younger. May the wings of your surfing never lose a feather, to quote Oliver Wendell Holmes. That's the South African one, not the American one.
Brewster, thank you very much. It's great to see you.
Classic.
Nothing's changed there, Shaun. Shaun, how are you doing? You don't need a break at all?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Spider, you're up down there? Yeah, let's bring him in. Shaun, we're going to, if you don't mind, we're going to move to your trips to Hawaii, which is obviously where your career really took off, I would imagine. And we've read, and it's so well documented, the role Spider played in your successes in Hawaii. So welcome, Spider Murphy.
Thank you. Great to
How are
be
you doing,
here.
Spider? Can you hear us?
Yeah,
You're awake? Thank you very
much.
much for your patience.
Sure.
Spider, just a little bit of background to yourself and your surfboard building career.
Yes. So I started off a company called War Surfboards with a friend of mine, and it was named after Eric Byrne and the group War. And so we did it for like about 3 years. And Esposito was my team rider, and Willie Sills. And then, and eventually my friend, my partner, he lost interest and he said, hey, listen, I'm over this. So then Graham Hynd heard that they were sort of available and he invited me to join Safari. So so we started with Graham, and I still got the very first board I shaped for him, and I kept that. I was so lucky to find it. And yeah, so Graham was a great guy to work with, and I actually changed his business. I came and I worked hard because I liked working, shaping and that. And we did glassing, did all the work that I could actually make the whole surfboard by myself, even blowing blanks as well. And then Graham told me that, hey, look, the Thompsons had just won the Untitled Chapter, I think it was. And the prizes were Eka had sponsored these boards, one for Michael and one for Shaun. Oh, here we go. So anyway, I did my best. I shaped it up. Shaun gave me all the info, what he wanted, and they liked them. And from there, it took off. We slowly, gradually
that relationship began.
Yes, yeah.
And Spider, I beg your pardon, carry on.
And then
carry on.
And then the shapes started changing. They started getting, we started getting those sort of gunny boards and that. And then Shaun I actually saw tube riding actually start properly, and it was Michael and Shaun, and it was an Untitled Champs we had, and the bay was like 6 to 8 feet, these perfect big peak barrels. And I saw Michael take off on one, and he went in the barrel, came out, and he was so surprised he actually fell off. Shaun saw that and said, hey, I'm going to do better than this. and Shaun paddled on the inside. They swung around, and that's where barrel riding started. And Shaun pulled into the barrel, came out the other side, and then they couldn't stop. They were just doing it all day long. And
on those boards that you had made for them.
Yes, and so that put pressure on us to start fine-tune the designs and that. And Shaun was pushing the designs. He had like 7 6s, and he told me the one day that he's driving them so hard to get through the barrels that he needed every single inch on the board. And so we would just fine-tune the rails, and I'd have pictures on the wall of Shaun surfing, and I'd look at the rail, the water coming over, and that's what I sort of was my sort of, the curve and the flow of the board. So and then I even started drawing foils, and that's been my lifetime thing, is foiling boards the whole time, and the curves are so beautiful. And so that's how we started off. And then one day Shaun came in, I think he was 16, 17, and he was stoked. He just came out the water and he just looked at the boards and he says, "Hey, I like this board, I like that board, I want this board." So I said, "Well, those are just stock boards, And he was still wet from surfing. And here's a good example that the world needs to know about. Is from that day, there was a surfer who was stoked. He was so stoked. And what, the corporate world don't understand what that is. Being so stoked is like the world is open to him, and that he's going to be a world champion or whatever it is. And you get him this high thing that you feel so great. I had a surf at New Pier the other day. The water was blue, there were dolphins swimming past, and these waves were just going from end to end. The equipment was great, and we were flying down the line and bashing the waves, and it was just amazing. And you come out the water, and I walked into my factory, and felt like I was on a cloud. You got this feeling that you don't get from anything else but surfing. And
sure.
And this is it's you get payment for what you do. You pay for a service that you do, and that is part of the payment. You just that does you such good, and it just brings you away from the stressful world onto this cloud of just amazing things. And if I could think of anything, it's a thrill of surfing. It's the excitement. It's nothing touches it. And Shaun knows that I had a tube once at Bay there, and this thing just threw over me and it shut off. And I thought, okay, I'm standing in this blue silver barrel, and suddenly it opened out and it blew out. I came out the side. I thought, wow, that's something of a lifetime. Could never ever forget that, ever. I still see it in my mind. So
I heard you talking to Sandy earlier.
Yes.
About how you found relaxation and so on.
Yes.
When we were sitting up.
Yes. So this is what I learned from Shaun, being stoked. And I think any surfer that wants to go on the world tour and he's not doing well, just go back in the mountains and think about it, and find that stoke that keep motivated. And equipment makes a big difference. So if you're on a board that goes amazing, it's going to help you get that stoke. So thanks, Shaun. That's been a lifetime thing for me. It was amazing.
So, and Spider, just off the top of your head, it might not be of any great relevance, but how many boards do you think you've shaped in your career?
I've lost count. Every day I'm just pumping them out, and I enjoy it so much. And so what I've done is I started off when Shaun started off, and I went through the whole business thing. I was in partnerships with the Graham Hynd and Lorraine Hynd. So eventually they left, and I got in another partnership. And then and I've been sort of fighting this thing the whole way, and also stressful too, because you have financial situations and that. And then so some of my partners left, and I ended up with one partner, and eventually we sort of got him out. And then the waves were pumping at North Beach every day from November right through to March. Every day was just firing, and I was there every morning. I got flu. I surfed through the flu. And then I started getting out of breath, and I couldn't work out what's going on. I thought, oh, that's strange, because I used to run from the bay would go, and I'd run down to the bay, no problem, and run back, no problem. But then I get halfway, and I'm out of breath. So, and then the one day I paddled out, and I thought, whoa, something's wrong. So I just didn't paddle. I just lifted in my board, got into the sand, walked up the beach, went to my cardiologist. He gave me an angiogram. He said, "You've got 2 blocked vessels." I said, "What?" Couldn't believe it. So I said, he said, "You're going to have a double bypass." I said, okay. So I went through all that, and then I went back to square one. I had to learn to walk and getting back on the board again and learn to lie down, stand up, and the confidence thing, and then I slowly started learning a lot of things. And what I did learn about is the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and right now it's like a Bible to me. It all comes from the Bible. All the business work to that. And it's an incredible thing. So if there's anything you want, you just say, I want this, I got it. And that's it. And it happens. And so what does through my stressful times, in business and that, is I have a problem, I just stay on that track. It's a positive. It's incredible. It's helping my surfing. So now when I paddle out, I'm not negative, I'm positive. And I know I just it's like Shaun in your surfing career. You look at the ocean, you're going out in the heat, and you visualize yourself surfing waves, and then it all happens for you. Just paddle out and it happens. And if you don't do that, so it's an incredible journey I've been through, and it's just getting better. And so my job now is to teach people to work and give them opportunities, and also the design is coming out amazing. And just
fantastic.
Now that's just coming together, and it's so exciting. And I just my bad habits are getting up early in the morning, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, sometimes 1 o'clock, and I just study the YouTube thing, and it's incredible what I've learned. And it's just I'm getting fitter. Hope to get to.
I was going to ask you if you're feeling fit.
Yes, so my diet is super healthy. I have my diet is normally as many vegetables as possible, and I have all the superfoods in my smoothies and that in the mornings. Drink coffee, 24, but a little bit of wine here and there. But other than that, I think I'm pretty healthy.
Spider, well done.
Yeah,
and the resin fumes and so on, and the dust from the sanding and so on.
I was actually really worried about that, because when I went in, the surgeon, Dr. Kleinberg, he said to me, "Listen, so you're the spider?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Don't worry, I'll look after you." So when I came out, he said, "I did a short little cut there for you. Don't worry." And he said, "I saw your lungs; they're beautiful." He said, "They're beautiful and pink." Oh, thank goodness, because I worried about the fumes and all of that dust and things like that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And Spider, now to get onto this, am I right in saying that board that you and Shaun designed, or you designed for Shaun, did that come about by accident?
Well, it's funny, I speak about the Stoke and working with Shaun. Shaun is so professional. I mean, he, at a young age, he said, "Listen, what time do you want to come in?" It was 3 o'clock. He'd walk in exactly at 3 o'clock, not a minute past or before, just at 3 o'clock. I don't know how he did it, but he always came on time. And he was always professional. And once he rode his board, he'd either phone me or drop by the shop and let me know how the board goes, which is so important to shape it, because, you need that direction. Are you on the right track or not? So Shaun was very, very professional, and I just wish so many more South African surfers would listen to the way he did, his professional career, and it's definitely the right way to do it. And I just see it. I coach a lot of surfers, and they seem to miss that key of that professionalism. It's so important. And he's the best at it. Nobody better than him.
Yeah, and that pink banana now.
Yes.
Why don't you just give us a little bit of background to the board and to the actual making of the board?
Yeah. So Shaun came to me and said to me, you wanted this board for Sunset Hawaii, and I didn't know what Hawaii was like. So I said, "What is it like?" He said, "Just take Cave Rock, 15 feet." Okay. So I had in my mind this hallowed wave. Meanwhile, when it gets 15 feet, it breaks out in the ocean. So I had that in my mind, the board shaped to fit the hollow wave. And the way it worked at that pipeline, not Sunset. So, we still good. It still works, thank goodness.
And if I may ask from a layman's point of view, was the rocker designed in such a way to fit in with a drop at pipeline?
Yes. Yeah, that was the whole thing, yeah. And the funny thing was, I took that board and I measured the center, then I measured out 6 foot, and it was exactly the same curve as the boards of today. How was that? I looked at it and I thought, hey, there's something in this board. What is it? And there it was. So that was part of it. It was quite amazing.
And Shaun, the first time you rode the board?
Yeah, that board was it was such a fluke, because it was so different. It had way more curve any board that I think that had ever been ridden before. I think principally because Spider wanted to get some more curve in it and put some bricks on it, as you told me, Spider, and it sort of bent the board even more. You know, that's like the South African way, boer maak 'n plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
South Africa they just do their own thing, you know, in order to like get to the objective. So it was made for sunset, but I remember I took it out at sunset, and the board had so much curve in it. And my first wave, as I stood up, I did a bottom turn. I spun out because the board had so much curve. And as I spun out, a guy ran me over, and I lost the board and paddled in. Had to go to the hospital, and then the pipeline came up, and I took it out at pipeline, and I only had the one board with me that was long enough to ride really big pipeline. And I remember paddling out with it. And of course, the guys were giving me a hard time. You know, where are you going with that pink banana? What you going to do out there with the pink banana? This was pink. It was supposed to be red. But Spider left, or Graham Hynd had left a bit of white pigment in the red when he did the mix. So it came out, what can you do? You can see the top was red, but it came out pink on the bottom. So the guys were giving me a bit of a hard time. And I remember paddling out there, and I was very nervous. It took me a while to get away. But once I got that first wave, because it had so much curve, it fitted in perfectly into the very hollow wave of the pipeline.
Yes.
And it also enabled me to take the drop later than guys had taken the drop before. They call it a riding backhand or riding backside with your back to the wave. And also enabled me to do radical bottom turns and go straight up and do big carves off the top, which had never been done there before. So it was like I had this, not just a technological edge, but also had a confidence edge.
Yes.
So, you know, it just suited my type of surfing. But, you know, that board was revolutionary. But I think the other boards that Spider made me, so that board was a 710 for big surf. So the boards that Spider made me for surf between 6 and 10 feet, the boards that were really the tube riding boards, these blue boards that he made me. Now those boards were the first boards that they call it today a single to a double concave. So it had a concave under my front foot for speed when I was inside the tube, and it had these two concaves going out on the tail of the board on the V, which enabled the board to really accelerate. And I could ride deeper than anyone had ever ridden the tube before. I could actually ride, they call it riding on the foam ball, which is only something that's really been developed relatively recently. So that type of board enabled me to do, I think, really futuristic surfing. And that board, blue boards that Spider made me, designed, I think were the forerunner of the modern curves.
Yes.
And they were so advanced, I think, for the time, Spider. And even, you know, you told me a few years ago you took the curve of a modern board and put it on that old 7-footer, and it perfectly. So you must remember, boards in those days were hand-shaped. So Spider had to come up with this. It was a creative process. It wasn't like just put it in the shaping machine and it's going to spit out a perfect curve.
Yes.
You know, he had to create that curve, which is, it's incredibly difficult. It's like a sculpture. Those boards, they're amazing, and I mean they helped me. I won the world title on Spider's boards. I won the Masters on Spider's boards. I won so many events, and then from there it was a progression to twin fins, and there were just so many amazing boards spinning that you shaped me, and all from those first curves. So Spider shaped me my first board in 1972 with a big Akai on it. Then it had a tape recorder on it. From then on, it was just we had a wonderful relationship, and I just want to thank you for all those. Some of the best moments of my life are have been on your boards.
Magnificent. And tell me, Shaun, the rest of the pack, did they then try and follow suit or emulate that particular board that Spider had shaped you?
You know, that board was so radical that that I think people started to follow it in terms of almost like a beacon, but never exactly. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was at a big event here in California, and they were honoring Lifetime Achievement Award Simon Anderson, who developed the thruster. Legendary, one of the greatest, like Spider, one of the greatest shapers and designers of all time. So Spider came up to me and he said, Shaun, you know, there's only been one other board made by another shaper that I've ever wanted as my own, and that's that pink banana that Spider shaped for you. So that was a wonderful thing to hear, and you know, Spider's had this fundamental influence on many shapers and many surfers around the world. I mean, he shaped boards for lots of incredible surfers, Martin Potter, Shane Horan, and you know, all sorts of amazing, Mike Thompson, all sorts of amazing guys who've gone on to great success. But I really, you know, thank you for the amazing boards you've done for me, Spider. They've been amazing.
And Shaun, just before we bring Sandy back in here, those boards that you rode in the 70s, have you kept them or did you get rid of them?
Yeah, you know, in those days you would just, you know, you had few boards. You didn't have many boards. You just ride them until they broke, essentially.
Yeah.
And, you know, I broke most of the great ones. I've actually still got the first twin fin that Spider made me, which I think is one of the greatest twin fins I've ever made. And I won so many contests on this twin fin that he made me in 1982. I still got that board. Yeah, but I know Spider's got a couple there, I think.
Well, just we're going to go and have a look at some of the comments here, because Spider's very kindly allowed us to try and auction off a pink banana replica.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, we're going to do it at the end, but I'm just going to disappear to go and look at, I'm going to find some heavy hitters in the comments section. We've got a reserve on it of 10,000, but we'll come back to it. That's ZAR. And yeah, hopefully we can make some money and then donate the money to you and you can give it to a charity of your choice. So we're going to try. I'm going to go and look at some of the messages and find out if there are any heavy hitters there. So if you don't mind, Sandy, you take over for a while. Then we come back and we're going to do the dangers of pipeline, Shaun.
Okay,
Spider?
Shaun, I've got a few more questions for you.
I beg you, sorry, Sandy. Spider, you're welcome to sit in the backstage there. We're going to come back to you unless you have to go somewhere.
No, it's fine.
100%. Thank you, Spider. Okay, I'm heading over to you, Sandy.
Thank you. Shaun, what does it take to become a world champ?
Wow, that's a pretty big question. But I think firstly it takes the stoke. You know, Spider spoke about how he always thought like I was one of the most stoked people he ever met. Yeah. I have a friend who's one of the most eminent lawyers here on the West Coast. He does huge cases and he lectures up at Stanford. And he told me, Shaun, you know, I asked you a question once about what it takes to become a world champion and how did you do it? And I said, well, number one, I was just more stoked than anyone else. Yeah. And he told me that he lectured on this. You know, I spoke to this guy who was a world champion, asked, and so that's essential because, you know, with that passion and with that purpose, there's no such thing as practice, ever. I never, ever thought of a surf session in my entire life as practice. Never, ever, ever, ever did I think of going surfing as being practice. I just loved it. And I just think I loved it during my time on tour. I competed my first pro contest in 1969. I competed my last pro contest when I retired in 1989. It was 20 years. I surfed more than anyone else on the planet. Wow. I put more time in the water, and not because I wanted to be the best, but because I loved it. And I think with that love, and obviously I had talent and I had commitment, I had discipline. I was a lifelong learner. To be a learner, you've got to be humble. Yeah. So I was a lifelong learner. I would read everything that had ever been written about surfing. I'd read every single book ever written on surfing. And I used to love to read sports biographies and autobiographies about, you know, how sportsmen got the edge, you know, what they do. So I was always very fascinated by not just the mechanics, but the philosophy and the psychology of sport. But it all came from the stoke, you know. I was super stoked. And then from a young age, I also I stayed away from drugs, completely stayed away from drugs. And in that period of surfing, there was a lot of dope.
Yeah.
All sorts of dope. But I just made a commitment that I would stay away from drugs. And I remember the first year I took the Pimpinata to Hawaii. I was doing my first year at university, so I was like 19 years old. And you know, I was offered a guy actually that I was staying with. While I was staying in a room that I was renting from his family, and he lived upstairs. You know, he offered me. He said, "Hey, Shaun, you got to try this." He had some aluminium foil and was smoking this white powder, burning it underneath with a burner and smoking. "Hey, Shaun, you got to try it. You got to try it, man. All the guys at Pipeline are doing it." I'm going, "Nah, what is it?" He said, "No, you got to try it. It's called China White." And I'm going, "China White? What's China White?" He said, "Man, come on, you got to try it." And the process, they call it chasing the dragon. I said, "No, well, what is it?" He said, "It's heroin." So I just went, "There's no way." And I'm out of there. And I left and I moved out and moved to another place. And, you know, the guy overdosed, died a few months later.
You look at the lines, you know.
Yeah, so it was really, you know, we all come to those crossroads when we're young. You know, what are you going to do? Are you going to make a bad choice or not? And you know, I was lucky. I made a lot of good choices. And for me, you know, what shattered me was here's my beautiful son, Matthew, and he made that one bad choice. So, you know, that's one of the things that kind of motivates me now to speak to schools, universities, and people generally, large corporations or groups. You know, you've got to think about that. You got to think about that.
When you're talking to big groups or even small groups, do you see when people get it? Do you see their light comes on when you're talking to them? Do you have that sort of perception around your audience?
For some people in the audience, you know, some people are cynical, but that's why my process, it's a perspective, it's not a prescription. I'm not up there telling anyone which path to travel on, because we make the choice and we make the decision. But I tell people, and young people especially, you know, that decision is going to come your way, and it's going to be a life and death decision. And like, what can I do? How can I help you?
Yeah.
Well, perhaps you could write your code, 12 lines. Every line begins with "I will," as a way to have this sense of personal power. But I also say, just think twice.
Yeah, wonderful.
Think twice. And I do these events with thousands of students at big universities. It's great. And I go, the decision's going to come your way. So what you going to do? And I go, I can't hear you. What you going to do? And then I go, think twice. And then I go, what you going to do? And then I get them to shout it louder. And then I get them to shout it louder. And then I get them to shout it louder. So I hope that with this process, that there's going to be one kid out there that's going to come to the crossroads and going to think twice. And then my work is
you're doing that.
Work is worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because I think that, and I get back so many beautiful letters from young people, and not just from young people, from other people. I lost 50 pounds as a result of the code. 50 pounds, how about that? My relationship with my child is better. I will live another day. Thank you for the hope you've shared with me. And these are statements that.
We lost Shaun.
No, Shaun's back. Shaun's back, eh?
Yes.
Shaun, you back there? Yep.
No, not back.
Chat amongst you guys.
Okay.
Mike, do you surf?
I used to, Sandy, when I was very young. But I've got an incredible love for the sport. I surfed until I got to a certain age where cricket sort of took over. Cricket was my first passion. Spider's still in backstage there. Let's bring Spider on.
Yeah, Brian, Spider, come on.
Hello, Spider. We've lost Shaun. Are you linking up with Shaun there again, Gary?
He'll come back on.
Spider, how are you doing? Are you all right? You don't need to go and have a leak. You've been sitting there since 4:30.
No, I sneak out every now and again.
Okay. Did you get your glass of wine?
Not really, I'm just drinking tea, thank you. I'm going to drive that.
I must tell you, PT has unfortunately bailed. He says he can't get the signal right. So unfortunately, we've lost Peter Townend. But what we're going to do when Shaun comes back, we're going to go into maybe the dangers of Pipeline and some of his challenges on at Pipeline and on the North Shore, and then a little bit about busting down the door.
Yeah.
And and then Sandy, maybe just for the viewers, your association with surfing.
My younger brother, Anthony, you met him.
Yeah.
And I also wondered why I was very sporty, and I wondered why I didn't surf, and I'm 61. And I remember very clearly what Shaun said. My father said to me, you get on that beach, they're drugs, and they're bad people. And,
oh, really?
and so it had a bad rap. So that's why I didn't start surfing in the 70s. I should have, because I eventually started 6 years ago. And so that was when I was 56.
Yeah,
55,
okay.
Yeah. I started surfing because both my boys, my younger boys are now 25 and 24, are big surfers. And so I got onto a longboard with my brother, Anthony, and he pushed me onto a wave at Hewlett's. And I caught my first wave when I was 55.
Well, it's another thing that amazes me about Shaun. I mean, his resistance to temptation must have been incredible. I mean, Spider, you know a lot more about that. But I mean, he literally had the world at his feet.
Yes.
And you know, I was going to say earlier, and I was reluctant to say it earlier, when you were talking about Shaun's professionalism. Yes. Maybe that's why he's the only South African ever to become world champion. Yeah. And I, with respect to Jordy Smith, as much as I'd love to, sorry?
Jordy's become world champ.
Who was that?
Jordy was world champ.
Was he world champ?
Yeah.
I think he's a junior champ, eh?
Yeah.
I don't think he's won on the senior circuit, as much as I'd love to see him win on the senior circuit.
But he was a world junior champ. Yeah.
Yeah. But okay. All right. What we're going to do while we try and get Shaun back is we're going to play an interview with Derrick Heinz.
Okay. Nice. Heinzie. Yes. He lives in my hometown.
Great Australian surfer and surfed with an.
Oh.
Derrick, I believe you're on a trip down the coast. Welcome to the show.
Good to have you. Thanks for having me, Mike. You're a good friend. And when I heard that Shaun was the object of this interview with a bit of PT thrown in, I was all over it because I guess I'm second generation pro surfer. Shaun and PT being first generation, along with the likes of his great cohorts, Bugs, Dane, Terry Fitzgerald, Kanga, on and on and on. And I was fortunate enough in the career sense of being a fly on the wall. As these guys were still the celluloid heroes, to see them in the flesh, surfing live events when pro surfing was so small. But oh boy, were they, it was better than any event these days to have been on the fringe of the cutting edge when those guys surfed anyway. To cut 50 years short, I'm at present heading down the coast because it's been a really good run of surf of late. Where I live in Byron Bay in Australia, that's the easternmost point. It's just come off having its best ever 2 years of a perfect bank, stretching longer than the best Cape St. Francis you've ever seen. And unfortunately, 2 floods came through and wrecked the bank. So now a lot of people are searching for surf.
And just as a matter of interest, where exactly what is the name of this place you're going to, or is it a secret?
Well, it's between Byron Bay and Crescent Head. and it's a reef break that doesn't get affected by the vagaries of floods. There isn't too much sand that gets swept in and out. So yeah, I would have to come to J-Bay and give you a good talking to if I was to reveal that.
well, I'll tell you why I'm asking you that question. I remember many years ago, you said to me one morning, you and I were having a cup of coffee at your place in J-Bay, and you said to me, J-Bay may not be the best point break in the world. In fact, it may not be the best point break in Africa, but you've never told me where the best point break is. And is it called the Snake, by any chance?
No, but I would be most surprised if J-Bay hadn't regained its mantle. With the way the wind drifts have shifted over the past 20 years since the early 1990s, you've got a lot of onshore flow on the South Coast and Wild Coast, which has disturbed those banks enormously, the ones that used to be the match, if not better than J-Bay, many times a year.
Yeah, great stuff. And Derrick, tell me now, memories of Shaun Tomson? I mean, as you've mentioned or alluded to, certainly, I mean, he's one of the greatest ever.
I saw Shaun at the Allen Oak Memorial Contest in 1977. He was on the Blue Railer, the Spider Blue Railer, and it was at a place called Woolamai on Phillip Island. And there was Shaun Tomson in a 6-man heat. And I think I was paddling out for my next heat, just a rank rookie outsider. And Shaun pulled into an impossible 4-foot dumper with that wide-legged front foot. And it was just like the movies. He just came out of that dump. I think they called it the doggy door years and years and years later.
Yeah.
But everyone just went, wow, not even MP could do shit like that.
Mm. And Derrick, just as a point of reference, just give us some background as to, excuse me, as to when you started out. You mentioned there that you were in this contest with Shaun, 77. Is that more or less when you started?
Yeah, at the time, in 76, I went to Sydney University and was there until 78. But through holidays, I got to throw my hat in the ring elsewhere. In 76, my only real claim was the InterVarsity champion, and I repeated that in 78. It wasn't until 79 that I started showing a bit of form, I guess. However, the Australian legs, they were open season in those days because the stretch all the way down the east coast to Bells Beach was fantastic as kind of a flea pit for people like me to have a go at making it.
And Derrick, tell me memories of Shaun at Super Tubes, especially on big days and perfect days at Supers.
Shaun Tomson, Johnny Parman, shut the gate. Those two guys.
Well said. Yep.
Well said. Shut the gate. I never got to see Terry Fitz at his absolute peak, which was the year before I arrived when Huglin shot Fantasy.
Yes.
But the way Shaun could drive off his front foot. A lot of people wonder how it could have been done so perfectly by Shaun. He had the weight balancing front and disweighting balancing back to perfection, like a rocking horse. And I traced that back, and I'm probably wrong, so forgive me, to the 1965 skateboard boom that hit Durban.
Quite possibly. Well, we lost Shaun, but an interesting point.
Shaun, forgive me, Shaun, but perhaps you were the most ugly longboarder I've ever seen on film, but you're also perhaps the best shortboarder I've ever seen on film. And that transition, I think, took place because of front foot, back foot on those bloody Surfer Sam skateboards from way, way back.
Yeah.
They didn't suit the longboard, but boy, they sure suited the shortboard.
Yeah, we had
what sort of role would the high line at Supers have played you? I mean, is that something that you work out naturally? I remember you often used to talk about taking the high line at Supers, and Shaun clearly did that very well.
Shaun played no influence in that. That was all Terry Fitzgerald, and with even more respect than for Shaun and PT, is the respect I've got for Terry Fitzgerald and Jeff McCoy, the two great shapers of the 1970s in Australia. And they were in a Cold War against each other throughout the entire decade. One's surfboards were based on sticking to the face, pivot, getting barreled and staying there. The other was high line flying on the wall with a giant edge at Sunset Beach and then fading and doing it all over again. So that's where I guess my mentor, Terry, said, you know, why would you want to ride a wave easily by staying around the pocket when you could run it at edge along the high line and run the risk of a really, really bad wipeout? But if making it, what a rush.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
I remember...
but getting back to Shaun, Shaun and JP, better than Simon Anderson at Supers, just because they radiated the high line, low line, as well as being in the pocket if they wanted it. Simon was the demolition maestro in and around the pocket.
Yeah.
But those two guys from such different backgrounds, one living in the dunes, the other at the beach hotel.
I thought you might bring this up.
In those howling 60-knot regular west winds where taking off at boneyards meant sand blasting the eyeballs.
Yeah.
That's the quotient from back then compared to now. Getting sand blasted in the eyeballs never happens. Never happens. Hasn't happened since the early 90s.
Yeah. And just digressing.
You had to be on. You had to be able to drive off the bottom with the wind underneath your board and then lift onto the high line, but know how to lean back off that high line into that wind and then come back down to start it all over again. It's a completely different sport, different lifestyle platform.
Didn't the Daytona 500 have something to do with that high line as well? Wasn't there
something
not dissimilar?
That's the gig without fins. You know, I was at the Daytona 500 in about 1999, 2000, and I was following a green car that was number 66 because that was my address back then. And it was a shocking car. It was in the middle, but then there was a big crash, and somehow at the restart, it got out front. So I was really focused half a mile away as it hit the speed bank. And I saw 3 cars up its arse. And at Daytona, that means at 200 miles an hour on the speed bank. And I saw my green car lose it. It lost track and it went sideways along the speed bank. And for about a second, maybe a second and a half, I saw it put a gap on the cars behind it before it went end over end in the most spectacular crash of the day. But in that time, I wondered if something like that could ever be done on the high line at J-Bay.
Yeah.
Without fins. I mean, it could only be done without fins because you'd be sliding laterally across the face, but instead of having a really bad stack, you would be recovering. So
is that essentially what inspired you to get into finless surfing?
Yeah. Well, I never called it that because of Daytona 500. That car lost all its friction. So it just became friction free.
Yes.
All friction gone. You see it to an even greater extent with foil boarding. But I just don't know what to make of that sport.
Yeah. And tell me, I take it you're still on finless boards there, Derrick? No fins?
No fins. It's been 16 years now.
Yeah. I must say there's some fantastic clips on YouTube of you on your finless boards that I happened to clip over the weekend.
Well, bugger the clips. I mean, it's just fun.
Yeah.
Just speed. As Terry Fitzgerald used to say, speed thrills.
Absolutely.
It sure does.
Yeah. And just digressing, the Gunston 500, you took part in a few of those, did you not?
Yeah, quite a lot. An historical anomaly is how the IPS rankings weren't filled with more South Africans, particularly the juniors.
Yeah.
The battle for the amateur Gunston was more intense than the battle for the Gunston 500. I mean, to fill those final places almost guaranteed you a spot on the Durban beachfront to serve out your army.
Well said.
I wish I could laugh, but I'm not laughing. It was that intense.
Yep.
And that's where Byrne got to surf that little shit he left running into the rock wall at the bay.
Yeah. And
what sort
of years are you talking about now?
Roger of physical responsibility. He really wanted to win the amateur Gunston.
Yeah. And all right, Derrick, we're gonna wrap it up. Any message you have for Shaun?
Oh, listen, I haven't spoken highly enough of Shaun. Shaun is, I just got a shiver. Shaun is, if not one of 5 pioneers, arguably the pioneer. What Ernie did for Shaun, I just got another shiver. In taking him early to Hawaii, in conditioning him into the art of tactics in the lineup, the way Shaun held his own against real Australian assholes in the water during the off-work.
You want to name a few?
Oh, well, you'll be interviewing.
No.
In fact, someone said to me the other day, boy, now, and he's an ex-world champion, very well known, isn't so-and-so a nice guy? And this is one of Shaun's direct peers, an ex-world champion. And I said straight to his face, well, no, he's not a nice guy. You had to contend with him in the water when it was anything goes to get that wave. I mean, full, total respect. It was like a Bugs Bunny clip where the wolf and the sheepdog check in the morning before they go to work. And they're really nice to each other. And then they're going to work, one being the wolf and one being the sheepdog, just wanting to murder each other. And then check out. Oh, how was your day, Ralph? Oh, good, Bill. How was you? Oh, not so bad. See you tomorrow. That's what processing was like. Scrapping for penny. But I'm so privileged to just have met those guys. I couldn't give a damn about what happened in the actual competition arena. Just to have been around those foundation days and people within the industrial side as well. Mighty. And Shaun, all power to the man.
Yeah, well said. I'm glad to see nothing's changed. You're still not scared to mince your words.
Oh, I was soft here.
I've just had a little message put in my hand to apologize to you for calling it finless surfboards. I should have called it friction free, so I do apologize. Peace, my brew. Derrick, it's always great to talk to you. And when are you coming to J Bay again?
I want to give the lineup chance to breathe after COVID and influxes, and I don't want to tread on anyone's toes. So I'm more likely to turn up one summer than anything else.
Yeah, well, please give me a shot. I'll give you the normal lift from the airport. And then just another thing that I've been wanting to ask you. Whatever made you or drove you to paddle out immediately after the Mick Fanning shark incident?
I study weather maps and surf reports. There was, sometimes at J Bay, there's a one-wave swell.
No. I'm talking about the shark that was obviously in the area. Next minute, you came paddling around the corner there.
Well, come on. It was an hour later. Next minute. Bullshit. But sometimes there's a one-wave swell. And I had it pegged that towards the end of the Fanning Julian final, that set was going to come. And it did.
Yeah, and it did, yes.
When I paddled out, and note that it was on an 11.6 board.
I recall.
I paddled way further out than where those guys were sitting, and the set came.
Yeah.
But,
I remember it well.
But full credit goes to my host of the time, Merv Herskovitz, down at the bottom of Albatross.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I wasn't even watching the final, and I suddenly heard, because he was watching it on the internet, even though at Albatross you could stare straight up, and I just heard him go, "Ooh, jeez," like that. And we just watched it unfold. And then he's a really classic Zimbabwean. And he turned to look at me and went, "Well, what do you reckon?" And there was a pregnant pause. And it's just the classic case of him begging the response, "Let's go."
Yeah, absolutely.
And he went out at the point, and I paddled out from the bottom of the point, the very bottom of the point. And it might sound trite, but it wasn't meant to be. It was in homage to that poor long-distance swimmer who got eaten about 3 years ago.
Yeah,
And
I remember that.
I wanted to paddle straight over his grave and say a word of prayer for him and for me.
Yeah, no, well done. Derrick, it's been fantastic talking to you again.
Sure,
I hope
mate.
you have some great waves and a safe trip.
Yeah,
Good to talk to you, as always.
All power, Shaun. Thank you. Thank you for being you, mate. See you.
Quite a character, Shaun.
That's he was an amazing surfer.
Am I right in saying that your dad actually took him to hospital when he had his eye incident?
Yeah, he did. He lost the sight in one eye. He got his leash came back, and I think one of his swallowtails hit him in the eye. I actually saw it all happen. He was in a heat against Mike Savage at the Bay of Plenty. Very, very sad. But he really bounced back incredibly, and he had he didn't let it hold him back. The guy was amazing. He had to surf with just sight in one eye. Incredible surfer, and just an interesting, very interesting person. Very creative, very offbeat, very much on his own path.
Very much so. I mean, to pull up on the side of the road in his motor car and conduct or give his little interview.
Oh, it was great.
Sums up Derrick. He was sitting in his motor car.
Wonderful. He did it. I was appreciative.
Shaun, you've been very generous with your time. We're nearly done. We would just like to talk a little bit about busting down the door, if you don't mind. And I'm sure Sandy has some questions for you as well. But I've watched that movie a number of times, and I beg your pardon?
I'll tell you also, I'd like to also mention my new book, which is.
We're going to talk about that, if you don't mind.
I just wanted to make sure, because it's one of my new creative projects, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. But busting down the door, that was I really enjoyed that project.
It's a fantastic movie, but when you look at it, there are quite a few things that intrigue me, and the movie almost tends to suggest that the Hawaiian surfers were on your side. Would that be right?
I had an amazing respect from the Hawaiians. I think for two reasons. One is that I loved Hawaii and the culture, and that came from my father. When my father was recuperating from arm surgery after his shark attack, he'd gone to San Francisco for arm surgery and then recuperated in Hawaii and met the Kahanamoku family, and I think had this lifelong love for Hawaii that he transferred to his children. So we always loved Hawaii. Then he brought Eddie Aikawa to compete in the Gunston 500 in 1972. And I remember at the time during apartheid, they wouldn't allow Eddie to stay in the hotel that had been booked from the Malibu Hotel on the beachfront in Durban. So Eddie came and stayed with us. And I used to take Eddie surfing every morning. And I think he never forgot that. And Eddie was this iconic figure. And, when we went to Hawaii when we were young boys, my cousin Michael and I, Eddie would invite us over and have a party for us at his house. So I think there was this wonderful warmth between South Africans, us and Eddie. And I think, sure we did got on the wrong side of some gangsters in Hawaii. And I remember I had to go and buy a 12-gauge shotgun because I had so many death threats. But it wasn't like the Hawaiian community. It was just this community of gangsters. And my situation occurred because this journalist had written about them. And they, for some reason, it was like false news that I had actually written this article because this journalist mentioned this gang in the article. So eventually the situation was resolved, but it was pretty scary. But in busting down the door, we really covered this one incident that Rabbit pretty much had and Ian Cairns had with Hawaiians, when Hawaiians perceived that they had been disrespected because surfing was their sport and in many ways that their lifestyle, because it originated in Polynesia, and perhaps there was a perception of disrespect when nothing was further from the truth. And I think once we sort of detail this court case in the movie, once I think everyone had their say and explained themselves, they could see that there was no disrespect, and I think things got back to normal. But it was a couple of tense months.
Shaun, sorry, can you see us?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Gary thought we had lost you for a moment. Okay, we're going to play a little trailer on busting down the door, and then we're going to get into the surfer and the sage. You cool with that?
On the island of Oahu, Hawaii, was emerging as the center of the surfing universe.
Surfing reflected sort of a counterculture idea.
The image that came out of the Summer of Love era was that surfers were really druggies.
Then this new group came along and said, no, we're not going to do that at all. In fact, we want to make surfing into a sport. And everyone turned around and just went, they want to do what?
There was no such thing as pro surfers, because you couldn't make a living from pro surfing.
You had this irrational group of kids, and they walked into this town just going, hey, you got some new moves, you got some new boards, you got some new attitude.
Hawaii was a twofold mission. It was one, I wanted to rip it, and two, I wanted to get famous.
Shaun, sadly, Petey has bailed. He said he had a link problem, which we just got from him a moment ago or a little while ago. So unfortunately, he's not going to be with us.
Petey's a very busy guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he is, but yeah, thank you for your time. Now, Sandy, do you want to perhaps kick off with Shaun and the Surfer and the Sage?
Yeah, so your first book is amazing. I've got a signed copy. I'm very lucky. Tell us about your second book and how it happened.
Yeah, so my first book was called Surfer's Code. And Surfer's Code came as a result of this code that I created for these young kids at Rincon. And then after I came out with the book, I was just at a local school here, a very small school of 80 kids. And I said to the kids, I was talking about my book because the headmaster had paddled up to me when I was surfing and said, you want to come down and talk to the kids about Surfer's Code? So I was chatting to the kids and I said, Surfer's Code's my code. I wrote it 12 lines. Every line begins with I will, 105 words. Why don't you write your own codes, 12 lines? And they wrote their codes, and the very first line of code I got back. So this was about 6 months, 8 months after I'd lost Matthew. The very first line I got back from a young girl was, I will be myself. So I just thought, wow, that is such a powerful, incredible line, and it's so potent that immediately I got inspired to write another book. So I wrote my second book called The Code. And it became really popular. And I use that as a structure now to motivate positive decision making and help people find and activate purpose. And then during COVID, so my career had shifted into keynote speaking and leadership workshops for large corporations. So when COVID happened, I was in Chicago. I had 3 events, and I did my first event and then had to cancel the next 2 on the day because of COVID. And I came back to my wife and I said, hey, my business is finished. It's done. I don't know how long COVID's going to go on, but no one is going to be wanting to be in a group of people. I've got to do something different. I've got to change. I've got to make a dramatic change. What am I going to do? And I'm going, but I know businesses are still going to want to empower and inspire their teams. So let me see if I can do it virtually. So I found a studio downtown here in Santa Barbara and a team. And I went, I'm going to create the first virtual keynotes and workshops because no one was doing it. Everyone was doing these funky things on Zoom. So I found the technology, I found the people, and I pitched it out to my client. My very first client was the hottest company in the world at that time. They were the only company in the whole world that had a treatment for COVID. It was called Gilead Sciences. They were on the front page of every single newspaper, and their teams were under incredible stress and pressure. So they needed inspiration, upliftment, empowerment, and connectivity. So I created programs for them and did a few events for them. And then I started doing all these events for like amazing companies virtually from the studio downtown.
Amazing, huh?
So what I did is I thought, how are these people feeling about COVID, about the stresses of COVID? How are they feeling? So I found this technology and I got people to send me texts right at the beginning of my presentation. I go, send me one word.
What, right now? Like in the audience?
Send me a word, yeah. Send me a word right now. Text it to me. How are you feeling? And the words, they would text me a word. I had this cool technology and it would come up on the screen. So someone in Sydney, Australia, and someone in Seoul, North Korea could send me a word. They'd arrive at the same time and they populate the screen. And I created this word cloud concept. So the more frequent words, the more popular words were bigger. So say I had 1,000 or 2,000 people on, I get 2,000 texts, but they'd all come up on one screen and the common words were bigger.
That's wonderful. So you can visually see it.
Yeah. So at a glance, I could see how people were feeling. And this is in all sorts of different groups. So I would do it with PTSD survivors. I do it rehab clinics. I do it with massive companies like Gilead. So the 4 words were?
No.
Stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. Those were the 4. I called it a sad mindset. So when I met Noah, my co-author, and he said to me, hey, Shaun, let's write a book. We just met. After 5 minutes, he said, Shaun, let's write a book together.
Just knew.
We were having lunch, and I went, right on, we're going to call it The Surfer and the Sage. He said, a guide to survive and ride life's waves. We had worked out the concept of the book, the concept, in about 5 minutes. But then it came time now, well, what are going to be the specifics of what we're going to write about? So I said to Noah, Noah's a scholar of theology. He studied both the New and Old Testament, plus the Torah, and also the Talmud and the Kabbalah. It's like the mystic aspect of Judaism. He's a very learned guy. Pulitzer Prize, which is a very big literary prize in the United States, Pulitzer nominated, and he's written millions of books. So I said, well, how many chapters should we have? What's a number that has a religious significance, that has a spiritual significance? So he said to me, every letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical equivalent. So he said, let's do 18. I said, why 18? He said, well, 18 is chai. It's a Hebrew word and it means life.
Yeah.
It's life. So I said, okay, well, that's great, 18. So we wrote, so now we got 18 chapters. But now I've seen how people are feeling, the sad mindset, stress, anxiety, depression. I'm going, well, let's write a book that can help with this. It can be like a bridge. It can be like a Swiss Army knife to change your mindset.
Beautiful.
So the way we structure the book, it's got 18 chapters, and every chapter is about a duality in life. It's not about the good or the bad. It's about the good and the bad. And every chapter starts like the very first chapter, anxious and calm.
Oh, wow.
Despair and hope. So the book is a little guide to help you go from despair to hope, from anxiety to calmness.
That's fantastic. It's a fantastic model. It's a fantastic structure.
So that's the way we did it. So you ask how it's created. Surface Code started out with the little card I did for the kids.
How did you meet Noah?
I just met him. Our friends introduced us. We just had lunch. We never even knew each other. 5 minutes.
That's
minutes.
amazing.
And you know, it's like you never know how life can work. But like I try to stay stoked and I try to get involved with cool projects and I try to always like just do stuff. It's very
So given what you're doing is so incredibly empowering for, as you say, even if it's just one person in the audience, although I'm 100% sure it isn't, but even if it's just changing the perception for that one person, what do you think would be the greatest miracle we need in the world right now?
You know what I want?
I do want to know.
So my code is everyone's code. My code is open source code. I want every person on this planet writing their code, 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. I want every single person on this planet writing that 12 lines, every line beginning with I will, and you write it in 15 minutes and you share it. And I'm creating this process right now. It's going to be ready next week. You can go on my website. You can post the code. You can create your own tribe. Sandy Coffey can create her own tribe, the Coffey tribe, or you can create, if you work for Unilever, you can create, and you work in the operations department, you can create the Unilever operations tribe, and in that tribe, everyone can post up their codes, and it's confidential, only that team can create the code. So when you write the code, you're activating purpose, you're activating positivity, you're activating power. And I want to create this wave that sweeps around the planet, empowering everyone, uniting everyone. Because when people read their codes and write their codes and speak their codes and see everyone else's codes, they realize that while every code is different, we only write 2 lines of code. And our fundamental purpose in life can be defined by 2 lines of code that every single person writes. They write, I will be better. We all want to be better. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. We want to be better tomorrow than we are today. We want to be better. But that's only half of our life purpose. The other half of our life purpose is people write this in their own way. I will help others be better. I will be a mentor.
So it comes down to that.
It comes down to those 2 lines. I will be a mentor. I will be a leader. I will lift others up when they're down. I will volunteer. I will donate. I will devote my life to service. And we all realize that we're the same and we're connected. In the United States, there's so much disunity. You have Republicans, Democrats. You have a big valley between it. I'll tell you what, the code, it's like a bridge.
Totally, because everyone's the same underneath.
Pardon?
Everyone wants the same thing. Actually, ultimately.
You want to get from the one side.
What is your code?
So you want to get from the one side of the valley to the other side, and then you ride that wave. And the code's like riding a wave.
I love it. And how did you get to the title of the book? Was that easy?
It just sprung into my mind. When Noah said to me, let's write a book together, I thought immediately, the surfer and the sage. It's
the two of you. Exactly. It's the 2 of you.
And he said to me immediately, when I said that to him, he looked over at me and went like that. A guide to survive and ride life's waves. That was it. That's how quickly, people, you can like think and like, and then suddenly, kaboom, it can happen. Yeah, so for anyone that's listening that wants to
get the book,
Oh, you can get the book, yeah, Pan Macmillan. It'll be out in SA. I think it's launching in about sometime in September.
Are you coming out for the launch, by the way?
I'm going to be in SA for like just 5 days in mid-August, but I want to come out perhaps a later time for the launch. I'm looking for like a corporate sponsor. I'd love to do a tour. Like when I did the code, I did a tour of schools in SA, from the poor schools to the posh schools. The Hilton Michael houses of the world. Plus, I also did super poor schools in Katlehong and in Nanda, Okhlanga School. I did this amazing school where Nelson Mandela voted for democracy in 1994. I went to Okhlanga School. It was amazing. I went to Kwalika School where a young guy is the principal, 1,600 students, and I helped him through school and helped him through university, and it was amazing to see this young guy. So I would love to be able to, to do another tour because kids just,
oh my gosh,
they love the code. I just got an email. I got an email yesterday from an English teacher in Avoca Beach, Australia. He said, "Hey, Shaun, I saw an interview with you, and I did the code with my students." And I went, "How cool is that?" He said, "Yeah. See, you must see what they wrote." So it's so wonderful to see that this code is open source code, and anyone that wants to use it can use it in any way they want. So this guy sent me this amazing stuff from his students, and it's just wonderful to see this connectivity that students can have, and how they take the code, and the code becomes their own. Like this is what the students wrote. I mean, I got this yesterday. I will go to bed with a smile on my face. I will take risks, but never do the wrong thing. I'll make someone laugh each day. And I create this poster for them, and it goes up on the wall of the classroom. So every day, one line from each kid, they can walk past it, and I will strive to be a better listener. I will stay true to who I am. I will never give up on what I love. I'll live in the moment. I mean, it's like...
Did you say 12?
This project...
12.
12, you got it. Yeah. But these...
And
then on
what's
the
the
poster
magic?
goes one line. I don't know. I have no idea why I came to 12. It just came out at 12. When I was writing it for the kids, I think it just came out. Like when I came to the last line, I will honor the sport of kings. And that last line's a metaphor, obviously, for integrity, respect. I was just like, I was finished.
So has Luke written his own code?
Yeah, Luke wrote his code. Carla wrote his code. And it's a wonderful thing to do with families. So on Monday, the website will be ready on Monday. I'm encouraging people, if you're listening, go on and create your own tribe. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your business, maybe it's just you yourself. And then all of you can write your code.
And anyone listening can sponsor Shaun to do his around South Africa school tour. You can just go onto the website and get hold of him. I mean, you've got to put it out there, Shaun.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be fun. I mean, I love. So I love coming back to South Africa. So there's something about South Africans. So when you think about it, so you have the richest guy in the world now, South African dude from Pretoria, Elon Musk. You have like one of the most incredibly famous actresses. Then you have like one of the greatest, Nelson Mandela, one of the greatest leaders of all time. We're talking about a small country. But you know what I've come to understand about South Africa and this whole concept of like boer maak 'n plan, and South Africans just go. Let me tell you, South Africa, motivation nation.
Totally. I mean, we've survived.
Nation. That's South Africa.
Yeah. So when you come back to South Africa, you can come down to St. Francis and stay. We've got a place for you there, and we've got right next to Hewlett's, right next to just a short ride to Cape St. Francis.
Short ride to J-Bay. Yeah,
Very short ride to J-Bay. Fast ride when the waves are cooking.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to coming back to the homeland.
Shaun, I'm finished with my part of it. I know that I asked you some very personal questions, and thank you for honoring me with those answers. I know it's difficult to go there sometimes, but I think that it's important to share, and I really, really honor and value your answers. Thank you.
No, with pleasure.
Well done, Sandy. Shaun, I know this has been a long time, but we would like to maybe ask you if we could just end off with a little bit on pipeline. We're going to play you a quick video. It's probably 20 seconds, if that. And then just ask you one or two questions about the dangers of pipeline.
Sure.
Well, I've always thought that pipeline's the most important wave in the world. I think it's one of the most technically challenging waves in the world. I think it's a wave that is really a measure of a surfer's courage, and also of his technical ability. And also it's a measure of his instinct, because it's a very instinctive wave. It's very compressed. It's compressed into ultra steep takeoff, jam into the barrel and out.
There's the pink banana again.
Yeah.
Shaun, some of your hairy moments there? Or some of your more hairy moments?
Yeah, when you see these amazing surfers today ride pipeline, John Florence and Kelly, and it's mind-blowing the chances that they take. But boards today are so much shorter, so guys are taking off so much later, and they're just managing to stick it in the face, almost like the first guys that did that with the boogie boarders, this famous Hawaiian boogie boarder guy called Mike Stewart, who was really a revolutionary, even though he was on a boogie board, about how a pipeline can be ridden. But it was always it's a very intimidating wave. You can stand on the beach at pipeline and you can feel that concussion almost through your feet, because it breaks very close. It's only 25 to 50 meters out. It's right there. It's almost like it's right near shore. So what's scary about it is the wave comes up out of very deep water and it hits the shallow coral reef, stands straight up, and then you've got a very hard offshore wind, northeast trade wind. So often, pipeline, and then there's a massive pack of people. Now, it wasn't crowded back in my day, but today, you've got a big crowd to contend with. So the big thing at pipeline is you've got to commit, man. You've got to commit to that drop. I write in the surface code, I will take the drop with commitment. So you paddle for that wave, you've got to paddle over the edge. It's almost like you've got to break through this fear barrier, and then you just got to absolutely commit to the drop. No hesitation. You have to be absolutely unequivocal in your focus and your desire and your power to just paddle over that edge. And then it's the big tube ride. Today it's not so much. You don't really see maneuvers that much at pipeline. It's just how can we take off as deep as possible, and make it out. And the danger is there because you're surfing over a very shallow coral reef, and pipeline, no matter how good the guys are, and even though they've got leg ropes, they still die out there. There's this incredibly fast current that sweeps along right by the beach. It's most probably a 5 or 6 knot current. So if you get caught in the white water there and you get knocked out, the guys just can't get to you in time. Even though there's lifeguards there with jet skis, people still die there. I think 18 people have died at the pipeline. And in fact, the last wave that I rode at the Banzai pipeline, it was an exhibition heat a few years ago, right before the final. They had some past champions. They said, you go out there. The surf was about 8 to 10 feet, radical. And I pulled into this big back door. Back door was the right-hand braking wave. And I pulled right into, and I was right back in the tube. And I thought, man, it's like the 70s. I'm going to come blasting out. And next thing, I'm lying on the reef, smashed on the reef, and my board comes over and hits me in the nose so hard that I just saw stars, broke my nose, exploded my nose. And I came up bleeding, and I remember half stunned, and there was still a few minutes left in the heat, So I get washed in, and I walk up, and there's thousands of spectators on the beach. And I walk up to a spectator to go, how's my nose? And I walked up to show him, the guy just ran away. So quickly, I thought, now I've got a few minutes left. I paddled out, and as I paddled out, the other guys in the water, this famous Hawaiian, Dane Killer, he goes, hey, Shaun, you better go in right now. I said, why? Does it look really bad? He said, no, you're going to attract sharks. There's too much blood. So they just glued my nose up right there on the beach with super glue. The dark on the beach. I said, is this medicinal glue? He said, no, I bought it at the hardware store. He showed me for $1.89. But that's the last wave I've ever and will ever ride at the Bankside Pipeline. It's a place for, I think you've got to be young, you've got to be fast. Although I did see an amazing wave from one of my contemporaries there, this guy Michael Ho last winter, but Pipeline's off the list now, off the list.
Yeah, although not so long ago he had that fantastic wave at Backdoor. I think it was around about December, January, I think at the age of 60 odd.
Yeah.
Shaun, I must tell you, you've been a fantastic host and fantastic guest, I beg your pardon. I'm a little bit distracted. What would you like me to tell Spidey? Hold on a sec. We're also trying to drag it up because Malikis is coming back shortly from Dahlstrom. But just briefly, you want to touch on the relaunch of Instinct?
Yeah, so I'm working with a crew in Durban, which is going to be really excited. That's where the brand developed. And I called it Instinct originally because the best moments in surfing for me were riding inside the tube, and the best tubes happen when you're riding on Instinct. So it had a very pure beginning. We used this wonderful logo that the guy called Derrick Berry designed off a picture of this guy Mike Duff, the South African photographer, had taken to be my first water shot ever. And my dad had me, before Instinct started, he had me use this big logo on my board. And I said, oh no, Dad, I'm too embarrassed, it's too big. He said, listen, this is the deal. You're going to have the logo on the boards, or else you're going to pay for the boards. So my dad was a great marketing guy. So that became the logo for Instinct. So we started in Durban, and now we're going to restart Durban. So we want to start off small, hardcore. All the big companies now are owned by these massive conglomerates, and we're going to have some cool, simple product that really reflects the core essence of Instinct. Surfing is life, the rest is details.
So manufactured in South Africa but sold offshore as well.
At this stage, we did a soft launch. Well, we did a launch in Australia a number of months ago, and it's been going quite nicely down there. So it's just small grassroots core, and I'm just hoping that the young crew, young surfers, guys and girls, get attracted to the purity of it, the interesting product.
Yeah. Well, best of luck. I hope it goes well. Just before you go, your mate has come back. He'd like to say hello to you. He's been in Dahlstrom.
I'll be
Sure. Gino the swallow, my bro.
I'll be rushing back. I'm flying all the way over the world yet to get to you, man.
I want my jacket. With the pineapples on it.
Oh man! But I tell you, I don't know where that pineapple jacket is. It's probably in the thing. But I believe we've got a special guest as well coming on. Is that right, Gary? Oh, okay. So Spider was on already.
Yes.
Spider. Oh, lovely, man. It was a couple of pictures, and I think we've just. Oh, there we go. I got it. I think Gary just wanted to bring on a few comments because we've had a whole lot of love. We've had a whole lot of love coming through. I was watching on the YouTube link, and it's been marvelous. Oh, there we go. There's Spider. One of your longboards there.
I love that.
Oh man. And And Shaun, I think it's just a couple of comments. You want to come on as well, Mike? I'll give you a. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see Kenny Barwood's on there. Say, cool, J-Bay surf. There's lots of love coming on here, Shaun. Plenty. And, Davina there from Sydney. I see Mike Grady here after 40 years
Barry
as well.
Walkman, I think he moved to the States. How are you doing, Barry?
Excellent, man. Mirinda Ferreira, good evening as well. And Kathy Marsh, she's got her hair back again, I see. Yes. Garth Webster.
Big G.
Local here in PE as well. To watch the Gunston 500, of course, I heard you talking about it earlier.
Incredible. I forgot to mention Gavin, what an amazing surfer he was. Incredible. One of the greatest.
Yeah, for sure. I see Barry Booker saying Shaun and Paul coming to SA next July. Is that right? Excellent. August, brilliant. So I'm not meeting them. Okay, brilliant.
Jeff Iziko, my good mate here, who's raised tens of millions of dollars for challenged athletes. Just an incredible, incredible work for the community. Still very
brilliant, man.
Thank you, Terry.
They're still very prachtig for you. There we go. Absolute legend and greatest of all time. There we go. Gunston 500.
Keith Clark.
Keith Clark's in the house. Yeah, he supplies us with some gin and punches and stuff every now and again.
Hello, Nuck.
There we go. Spyball saying hello. Stuart Portuguese all the way from USA as well. They're watching from all over the world.
Oh, they love you, Gino. Cool.
Dean
Allen's our historian. He's over in Slovakia at the moment. So we got people.
I love
this surf culture.
I love the lighthouse feature.
Oh, there we go. Yes, very nice. Barbara Manners, Barbara knows everybody in this town as well. She's been a sunrise. Thank you so much, Barbara. Anthony, all the way from Cape Town. I know Anthony's from Cape Town, and biggest salutes to you as well. There we go.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, no, this is very cool. It's very nice. Very nice of you guys to do this. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on, Shaun. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
I've been picking up stompies the whole way through. You know, I've been on the plane, so we get little bits and pieces here and there.
Shaun, thank you very much for your time. It's really been great catching up with you, and hopefully we can catch up with you in August. But we want to try and do the auction on that board, or try and do something along those lines. And then if we get the right number, we donate the balance to your charity, or charity of your choice.
Great, yeah, no, there's
we'll discuss that with Spider.
Yeah, there's two great charities. There's Nine Mile Foundation down in Cape Town, and Surfers Not Street Children up in Durban. So those are two charities I love. Both of them just do incredible work using.
Okay, well we'll make sure we get the money to those ones. We'll keep in touch with you, and we'll find the right spot to do it. And speak to Spider. I did an auction at the Billabong program, the Corona Pro. And I think they raised like 220,000 Rand or something there for a charity too. So if we get the surfers drunk enough, then we'll be able to do it. Yeah, but Shaun, I know Mike can't hear you on this particular one. Yeah.
Don't worry, I can lip read.
Okay,
I can lip read.
But thank you so much, Shaun, for coming on.
Thank you, Shaun.
I don't know if we're going to do the. No, okay, go. All right. So and I know next Tuesday we've got a show again. It's Ari Clark next Tuesday. We keep in with the surfer theme.
Right.
Sharon's son Ari, and we're doing it. But thank you. I'm sure you want to say.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Really, thank you very much, Shaun. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, being with you.
Spider.
Thank you very much, Spider,
for coming on as well.
And Spider, if you don't mind, I'll contact you about that board. We'll put feelers out. We've got a couple of names there.
Okay.
And then I'll discuss it with you if you don't mind. But thank you very much for your time and your patience, and for the wonderful stories.
And thank you, Sandy.
And thank you, Coffey, coming on as well.
Love to call it.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Sandy. Thanks.
All the best.
Sure.